2 years ago, at the beginning of a worldwide pandemic that locked us all down, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie became the sleeper hit of 2020. It was a supreme example of how a little bit of fan backlash and criticism and the proper response to such criticism can actually turn what was destined to be a disaster that would literally fizzle out and die without getting any momentum could literally turn into one of the biggest films of the decade. A film that was 20 years overdue. And on that year, Sonic the Hedgehog actually became the best video game movie in history purely by default. I have stated my criticisms of the movie that I honestly believe that the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie isn't really a Sonic the Hedgehog movie so much as it is a road trip movie that happens to star Sonic the Hedgehog, and that, effectively speaking, it really is only the best video game movie because it happens to star a popular video game character and actually wasn't awful. 2 years later, it has been usurped by Sonic the Hedgehog 2, who has 100% earned the title of Best Video Game Movie of All Time. Hello everybody, I am the Linkzilla, and I just got back from watching Sonic 2. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I basically am winding down from a very busy week of visiting relatives and having fun, and well, I decided that after all was said and done, everybody had basically gone home, I decided to take in a movie, and I finally got to see Sonic 2, and honestly, I am just blown away by the quality that this movie actually has. So, sitting here, winding down, having myself a snack of chili dogs in honor of the Blue Blur himself, and I figured that I would give you guys a bit of a sort of rambly reaction / review of the movie. Effectively speaking, the first half of this is going to avoid spoilers. I'll have a warning partway through when I finally get into spoiler territory, but in essence, I want to basically just sort of talk about how I took this movie because, well, I have my problems with the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie because it feels like a movie that features Sonic but isn't necessarily about Sonic. This movie feels like it is more about Sonic, and a whole lot of the inadequacies of the first movie are corrected and addressed with this one. And I am all for it. Honestly, I am all for effectively what they did with all that they attempted to do with this movie, and I'm still honestly just so blown away by it. It's been basically like an hour and a half since I got back from the movie, and I'm still basically like trying to collect my thoughts on how good the quality of the movie is. So, what can I actually say about this movie that doesn't go into spoilers? Well, that's actually going to be quite easy because a whole lot of this movie gets spoiled in the trailers. Now, don't get me wrong, that's basically typical of movies nowadays. I kind of wish they would leave certain things out so that we can get surprised when we actually go see the movie later on. Don't get me wrong, this movie actually does have a lot of really welcome surprises. But let's finally get into it. I gotta admit though, like, I was cutting it really close trying to get to the movie. I basically ordered like my ticket, and all my concessions as the movie was starting, so I decided to take my soda, go into the theater, basically lock down my seat, and then go back and get my concessions as they were being finished, and by the time I got back to the theater, the movie had started, and, well, I don't think that I missed much. I don't think that I missed much, because I honestly think that, like, it was only just, like, a few brief moments before, like, everything else came on screen, but I'll have to... I think that if I really wanted to get into it, like, I mean, it's the first thing that you see in the movie. It's Dr. Eggman on the Mushroom Planet. He's built a kind of Rube Goldberg machine that's basically like trying to basically make coffee out of mushrooms. He's experimenting on trying to grind up the mushrooms on the planet to something that is the equivalent of coffee. So, anyways, what's the big draw of this movie? Well, as you all know, especially since we're looking at a poster for it, this movie basically was hyped from the moment that the first Sonic movie ended with the introduction of Tails, and effectively speaking, like, we all knew that Tails was going to be a part of this. This was going to be Sonic 2, basically kind of like an adaptation of the story from the game, where Sonic finally teams up with his iconic sidekick, Miles Tails Prower, and they go on an adventure to stop the evil Dr. Robotnik, aka the Eggman. So, we all basically were expecting Tails to show up, which honestly brings me back to my beliefs that I just genuinely can't believe that other design for Sonic was ever truly real, because that would mean that they would have to redesign not just Sonic, but Tails and the Echidna tribe that we see in the opening of the original movie. But still, I don't really want to go into conspiracies, because if the models for those characters do exist, I would like to see them. I hope that they resurface someday just to put our mind at ease. So what else did we like? What we basically knew that we were going to expect Tails in this movie, and we get Jim Carrey being closer to the Dr. Robotnik that we associate from the games, because, well, let's face it, that stinger at the end of the original movie that shows Jim Carrey's Robotnik now resembling the Eggman from the games, that was the point that I actually got the most excited for the original movie, and it's like, oh yeah, I want a sequel, and I want it now, because that was the point where I'm like, this is the Robotnik that we should have been getting the entire time, but we had to gradually build towards that. And let's face it, that rock connaissance joke, it's that kind of lame joke that you just can't help but love. Anyways, so what did we not expect from this movie? Well, I was expecting Sonic 2, when in reality, what we ended up getting was a lot closer to Sonic 3. A combination of Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Yep, I honestly think that it was the biggest surprise when the trailer dropped back in, what was that, February? Where we actually saw Knuckles for the first time in the trailer, and honestly, I couldn't believe that they actually decided to bring in Knuckles on this, because, well, for the one thing, it's kind of both. I honestly thought that they were jumping the gun a little bit, because it's like, it's Sonic 2. It's supposed to be the story of Sonic meeting Tails, and them basically like going on their first adventure together. Adding in Knuckles will overcrowd the movie, because that story is supposed to be about Sonic and Knuckles starting out as rivals, but eventually becoming friends and allies. Are you going to basically like shoehorn Tails into that as well? Because I have a feeling that that's going to make the dynamic seem a bit lopsided. But, honestly, like, with the movie and the trailer that introduced them, it really was a great way to hype up everything. And the only thing that I was apprehensive about was the fact that Knuckles was being voiced by Idris Elba, and, well, what can I say? Idris Elba is such a prolific actor. He has played some of the most serious-minded characters on film, and don't get me wrong, he's not ever been opposed to providing the voice for a well-known, iconic, cartoonish character. I mean, he provided the voice for Shere Khan in the 2016 live-action Jungle Book adaptation. But the thing about it is, Shere Khan is a very different kind of character. He's a villain. You would expect him to have that sort of eloquent, soft-spoken and rather villainous and imposing voice that Idris Elba can provide for him. But with Knuckles, honestly, it's kind of strange to me because, well, I'm not saying that he gives a bad performance, far from it. I just think that, like, it was a really interesting decision to cast Idris Elba as Knuckles because, well, let me just put it this way. Sonic at times doesn't necessarily sound or like talk like I would expect Sonic to, but both he and Tails effectively sound like who they're supposed to be. I can accept that this is the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog, even though it's not really what I'm particularly used to. I can recognize it sounds like Sonic, it uses an inflection like Sonic, and I'm pretty sure that with Tails, they got the voice actor from the actual games to reprise her role, so if I'm assuming, right, if it is a her. That's why I don't really want to go into specifics, because I'm not looking it up at this time, but the point is that with Knuckles, however, Knuckles is supposed to be 16 years old, 17, if not 18. I think that he's supposed to only be slightly older than Sonic in any regards, so the fact that he's supposed to be a teenager on the cusp of adulthood, being voiced by, I forget how old Idris Elba is. I don't know if he's in his 50s or his 60s. So he's being voiced by someone who's much older than that target. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't find anything wrong with that, but I find it a bit bizarre because it kind of comes off like they're doing it because they want to attach a big-name actor like Idris Elba to this project in order to basically garner more attention, more credibility. And I just really want to sit down with Idris Elba and just flat out ask him, how do you feel about voicing this iconic video game character who's effectively a red cartoon echidna with boxing gloves? So how do you feel about taking this role? Because that's a conversation that really needs to be had. So, but anyways, Sonic 2, it really takes everything that the original movie did and just does it so much better. Because one of the things that is, well, let me just put it this way. How do I put it? So, one of the problems that I tend to have when it comes to adaptations of video game movies is that directors and filmmakers kind of tend to shy away from the concepts that make the video game what it is, and I can understand why. Because when you're translating a video game into a live-action movie, you're not only transitioning it and translating it into a story, you're trying to bring it into the real world. You're trying to legitimize it in a lot of ways. And the first Sonic movie, it basically tried to do that, but it didn't do it as well enough as I would have liked. It did standard things, like, for example, Sonic's magic rings. At the end of the original level of each Sonic the Hedgehog stage, if you collect 50 rings, you can jump into a gigantic warp ring that takes you to the special zone. The movie reinterpreted this as the magic rings are the key to traveling between different worlds, different planets, different dimensions, that kind of stuff. That right there is a cool and interesting concept that translates well to the theme of the movie. Although I feel like it kind of somewhat, I feel like it kind of sort of either artificially creates tension or kind of ruins tension when you realize that so long as Sonic has enough rings in his supply, he literally could teleport from one end of the Earth to the next without really suffering any consequences. Sonic could literally be there within a blink of an eye when you need him without his Sonic speed. The other thing that I thought translated really well is how they handled Robotnik's character. I'm pretty sure that I mentioned it, like, in my original take on Sonic the Hedgehog 1 back in the day, and yes, I know that basically, like, even though the climax of the film takes place in Seattle, I kept saying San Francisco. That was a mistake on my part. I know the difference between the two cities, and I'm sorry. So, wait a second. Did I just get that wrong? No. It takes place in San Francisco, but I kept saying Seattle. That's... I just got it backwards. I kept saying Seattle. It takes place in San Francisco, because the pyramid building. Which is ironic, because I'm pretty sure that this movie starts out with an action scene in Seattle, but we'll get spoilers with that. Not that it matters, because the trailer spoiled you anyway. So, what's funny is that what I mentioned in my first review is that my brother, he always hated the Eggman nickname and thought that it was something stupid that the American localization came up with, and only ever referred to the character as Robotnik. And yet I had to point out to him that the Robotnik character was always meant to be associated with eggs, because why else would all of his machines be dubbed after eggs and whatnot? So Eggman was a part of the character's identity. So the reason why I brought this up is because I think that the movie handled it, because Jim Carrey is playing Dr. Ivo Robotnik, a guy who is obsessed with technology, who is a bit of a psychotic megalomaniac, who actually does want to take over the world and is basically only working with the government's resources until he can get his hands on a power source powerful enough to power his machines that he could then use to basically stage a coup in order to take over the planet. So the thing about it is that all of his flying drones, his badniks as they are called in the movie, and we'll get to that, they're shaped like eggs. So when Sonic finally confronts him at the end of the movie, he sees all these flying eggs and calls him Mr. Eggman. So it's exactly how I imagined the Eggman moniker would have been created. It's basically a kind of derogatory nickname that Sonic gives to Robotnik to lessen his power, to lessen his threat value, lessen his credibility. It's like in Sonic Underground, where Sonic and his siblings refer to Robotnik as Buttnik. That's them making fun of him. So I felt that translated well. All of the small, subtle references to the original source material in the first movie, they're all really nice, but I don't think that they go nearly as far with them. This movie, however, really does go far with them. You can tell that after the success of the first movie, because they listened to the fans who hated the original design for Sonic, this movie is practically a love letter to the fan base saying, you guys saved us from making a huge mistake. This movie is our gift to you. It is a love letter. Thank you so much for doing what you did and setting us right. This movie is all about you guys. So, effectively speaking, there are a whole lot more references to the video game world that inspired Sonic in this movie that are really, really welcome every single time. Every time I saw something from the movie that I recognized from the games, I actually laughed and gave a little cheer. I didn't do it all that loudly because I didn't want to disturb the other people in the theater, but I really did enjoy it. And I gotta admit, the humor of this movie was a whole lot better than the previous one, because I actually laughed a whole lot more than I did watching the first one. Like, with the original Sonic movie, I kind of feel like the humor, in a lot of ways, was a little bit forced, a little too cheesy, but I ultimately enjoyed this one a whole lot more. I felt like the humor was a bit more genuine, and I really could get behind a whole lot of the jokes and references that were being made. At the end of it all, both Sonic movies are just a whole lot of fun, but this movie cranks the fun all the way up to 11, and that is basically what you can really get behind. And then some things from the original movie, the references that they make to the games, they don't exactly work, but other things do. Like, for example, they have to like I said, they're translating the games to the real world, so they have to present certain things as realistically as possible. So at the end of the movie, the climax features Dr. Robotnik flying around in not necessarily an Eggmobile flying pod thing, but more like this really souped up hovercraft that basically is being powered by Sonic's quill. And that's the closest equivalent that the first movie got to Eggman's Eggmobile. And, well, it works, while at the same time it doesn't work because you have to really squint your eyes to sort of see the connection that's trying to be made. But I think that it ultimately is satisfactory for the purposes of what the movie is supposed to be, because it's not just meant to sort of be a reference to the iconic imagery of Eggman flying around in a flying machine. It's actually supposed to be the final boss, so it might justify being a little bit more souped up than his usual flying Eggmobile. And, of course, the climax features Sonic powering up with his blue electricity, the speed, or chaos force, as some people are dubbing it. And he bounces all around the street in Green Hills, hitting the pod over and over, kind of like a combination of the homing attack as well as Sonic basically ramming himself into Eggman's machines like in the game. That's a good translation right there, and it's a good kind of way to showcase not only the power that Sonic has, but to translate all his abilities into the movie itself. It's kind of like that scene where Sonic spin dashes for the first time. I didn't even realize that that's what actually happened because I'm so used to the spin dash, but it's like, wait a second, I just witnessed the first spin dash of these movies, and it's awesome. But anyways, I'm talking about what this movie does better, because as you can see, Jim Carrey now resembles the Robotnik Eggman character a whole lot better. The big goofy mustache, the goggles and everything, the red suit. Honestly, I kind of feel like the suit needs to be a bit more red and a little bit less black, and I kind of would have preferred it if they had given him an orange mustache, because, that's a bit more closer to Robotnik and whatnot. But anyways, so many references to the games, so many things, so many little details that I really can't go over them all because they were all so good. I feel like basically the movie is incredibly solid, and it actually stays true to the characters a whole lot more. Although, well, I'll have to get into that for in a moment. The action scenes are really good, and the comedy scenes are much better than they were in the original film, which is a bit more solid. If I could basically talk about some of the things that I don't like about the movie, is that, well, I kind of feel like certain scenes actually outstay their welcome, because, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are certain scenes that are actually kind of, they're funny and they're enjoyable, but I kind of can't help but feel like maybe a few seconds could have been shaved off of these scenes in order to get to the point a little bit more. And I kind of help but feel like they did a sort of overcorrection problem when it came to fixing a problem from the first movie that I commented on. They overcorrected it so much, but then they ended up 180ing and steering back into the exact same problem because, well, let me just sort of put it like this. One of the things that this movie does really well is that it is what you kind of expect it to be, with Sonic basically having his adventure with Tails and sort of kind of garnering that brotherly bond between the two of them that would form, with Sonic and Tails being best friends even though they basically just met each other. It's the scene where they first have to work together. Effectively, I don't want to go into the details of it, but it is good that the movie implied that they weren't exactly in sync with each other as of yet, until Sonic basically kind of takes control of the situation, takes the lead, tells Tails to follow his lead. That is basically where you get the kind of dynamic between Sonic and Tails. Sonic is always the stalwart leader, and Tails is basically the perfect definitive sidekick. He's willing to basically follow cues and take orders. He's willing to basically follow Sonic's lead because he trusts Sonic and knows that he knows what he's doing. That scene ends up being good. The problem is that I really would have trimmed that scene down a whole lot. Because it kind of feels like in scenes like that, they're kind of hand wavy. Get to the point, please. The scenes that I'm talking about feel like more of a distraction rather than an actual contribution to the plot. It's come on, keep going, keep moving. Don't linger on this any more than you have to. So, but anyways, that was still an enjoyable scene. But you guys remember what I mentioned in the first movie. There was a character in the movie who was literally so superfluous, who was only there to basically make stereotypical jokes, that honestly, you could erase this character from the movie entirely, literally cut out every single scene that she's in, and the movie literally wouldn't be all that different, because that's how superfluous she is. Yeah, that character was Rachel. She was basically a pretzel lady's sister. And man, do I seriously not know what her character's name is after 2 movies? Honestly. Well, the point of what I'm trying to say is that in the first movie, her character is literally just there to just be the anti-cop, really mean-spirited sister-in-law who basically is trying to convince her sister to divorce Tom for literally no reason other than the fact that he's a cop and the fact that he's white. But still, I thought that her character was so superfluous in the first movie that you could cut her out entirely and you literally wouldn't miss out on anything. They tried to overcorrect that problem by literally making her and her character integral to the plot of this movie. And I'll get to that in the spoilers. However, despite the fact that she becomes integral to the plot, she once again joins the category of scenes where they go on for far too long, they take forever to get to the point, and I realize, definitely at the end, you literally could have cut a whole lot of scenes involving her out, and it literally wouldn't be any different. Effectively speaking, I'll get more into this in the spoilers, but I really can't help but wonder, does anyone actually care about this character and her subplot? Because as far as I'm concerned, she's an obnoxious waste of space, and I really hope she doesn't come back for the third one. I honestly think that the movie is making scenes with this character so that when these films start premiering on television, on network cable television, whatever, they can actually cut room for commercials by cutting scenes with her out of them. That's how they're gonna shave off enough time in order to fit in the commercial breaks. And I'm all for it, honestly. And I'm not saying any of this because some kind of prejudice. I'm literally saying this because, 1, I don't find her character to be all that funny, and 2, I don't find her character to be in any ways necessary. She feels like just an obstacle that's in the way, that's easily dispatched, so easily that you honestly could just hand wave her away and she'd disappear from the plot entirely. But anyways, so here's one of the things that I really do want to comment on. When I realized that it was, in fact, Idris Elba who was going to be voicing Knuckles, I honestly was very hesitant about it, not just because of the age, but really more the gravitas that Sir Idris Elba has, and the kind of characters that he plays in the past. I mean, how do I put this? I mean, it would be like doing a live-action adaptation of a Pokemon movie and having a cutesy little Pokemon like, say, Jigglypuff being voiced by James Earl Jones. You give Jigglypuff the voice of Darth Vader. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Knuckles is one-to-one with a Jigglypuff. I probably could have gone with a tougher Pokemon like Machoke or Machamp, but I'm trying to basically kind of like show how absurd it is, because here's one of the things that I find to be really interesting in how this movie parallels its predecessor, because I'm just going to have to get into it. One of the things that these two movies end up doing right is that they did the one thing that Sonic the Hedgehog has actually needed throughout his entire 30-year-plus existence since the game started back at the turn of the 80s and 90s. And it actually irritates me that they did do it, because it's so jarring from what we're used to and what we're expecting. What did they do that they needed? They give Sonic the Hedgehog a character arc. Yeah, I literally have this conversation with myself a whole lot, because when you actually boil down every single Sonic game, even the games that are more story-focused and actually have voiced cutscenes, they actually focus more on the story than just getting the Hedgehog to the right side of the screen and helping him destroy the evil scientist machines. The ones that are totally story-driven, Sonic doesn't have a character arc, because Sonic is created to basically not need one. Sonic, as a protagonist in the games, he's somewhat of a paragon, as in, he's the kind of character that inspires the best from everyone around him, except for the bad guys. The bad guys all hate him because he represents everything that they dislike, disdain, and he is the anachronistic to them. He basically is the guy that thwarts them. But for the good characters, Sonic is basically everybody's friend. He's the guy that comes in and makes your life better just because he has a presence in it. He's the guy that you aspire to be like. The guy who is willing to take action and run headfirst into danger without showing any hint of fear, but also the guy who's willing to be so laid back and chill and calm down every once in a while that you can't help but admire him. And, well, don't get me wrong, that's an okay character for the video games, because Sonic as a character doesn't need an arc, because Sonic arguably doesn't need to change. Sonic doesn't need to learn a lesson because, for want of a better term, he's perfect just the way he is. And that's why I make the argument that Sonic might be a little bit boring as a protagonist. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say anything negative against Sonic, because I love the Sonic games. What I'm saying is that translating that character into a story, you begin to realize that there are other characters out there that actually have a more interesting story and more interesting background than Sonic, because they actually have story arcs and character development that they go through under the course of their stories. One of them is a particular red and black ultimate elephant in the room, but we'll get to him later. The character that is the prime example of all of this is literally the echidna right in front of us right here. Knuckles in the games actually has a very deep and very complex backstory that actually makes for a more interesting protagonist than Sonic, because Knuckles is the one that actually has to undergo the character arc. Let me just put it this way in order to talk about how weird all this is. Here is the examples from the games. Knuckles is the last surviving member of the Knuckles Echidna tribe. He was left alone on Angel Island for literally all of his life and was told to guard the Master Emerald forever. Basically, just not let anybody ever get the Master Emerald, never leave the Emerald unguarded or unprotected. So, Knuckles has been living alone, in isolation, with no one, no friends, and nobody to talk to, in order for basically most of his life, guarding the Master Emerald, the source of infinite power of chaos energy. Effectively speaking, Knuckles has grown up without really having the ability to socialize, and he's just been all alone. He doesn't really know how to react to other people, and the worst part about it is that because Knuckles has been alone, he is honestly a little bit naive. The thing about Knuckles is that he's not necessarily dumb. He's not just a macho meathead. He's just very gullible. He's easily tricked and easily manipulated because he's lived all of his life alone, and he doesn't want to actually be alone. He knows that it's his job to be alone, but he honestly is willing to trust people in order to, I guess, sort of enjoy their company. The problem is that the first people that he usually ends up meeting are the wrong sorts of people who end up manipulating him and giving him the wrong information, like what happened in Sonic 3. After the events of Sonic 2, the Death Egg ends up crashing onto Angel Island and knocking the island out of the sky. Once Eggman emerges from the wreck of the Death Egg, Knuckles is the first person to encounter him, and Robotnik manages to convince Knuckles that he's actually the good guy, that the only reason that he accidentally crash-landed on this island is because that evil Sonic the Hedgehog stole all the Chaos Emeralds and tried to destroy his ship. And so, Knuckles, who has a unique connection to the Chaos Emeralds thanks to the Master Emerald, decides he's gonna teach that Sonic the Hedgehog a lesson for being so mean to my new scientist friend here. You see, that's how it goes. Because Knuckles met with Dr. Eggman first, he assumes that Sonic is the bad guy. He punches Super Sonic in the face and steals the Chaos Emeralds. That is the dynamic of Knuckles' relationship. The fact is that Knuckles, he's been alone for so long, he doesn't know how to properly socialize or read social cues or understand. Well, he doesn't really have all that much in terms of common sense. So he ends up inadvertently helping Eggman throughout the entirety of not just Sonic 3, but also Sonic and Knuckles, in that he basically tries to hinder and inhibit Sonic at every turn, despite the fact that Eggman is sending his forces all around the island and are causing a whole lot of destruction. They're destroying the island to try and stop Sonic, and Knuckles doesn't recognize that. He only thinks that Sonic is the bad guy because he's gullible, he's naive, he's too willing to trust the first person that he's interacted with in years. So why did I bring all this up? Because all this is backstory from the games, but it makes for an interesting story because you pretty much are following Knuckles' story as he tries to inhibit Sonic throughout both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles until the very end, where Sonic finally makes it to the Temple of the Master Emerald and Knuckles finally confronts him in a one-on-one fight, only for the fight to more or less end in a stalemate when Robotnik breaks into the chamber and steals the Master Emerald. And Knuckles finally realizes that I've been had. The Eggman has been playing me this entire time, and now he's double-crossed me. And so he steals the Master Emerald, and Knuckles is severely weakened, and he realizes that I've been tricked. I've been so busy trying to fight this hedgehog that I didn't realize who the real bad guy was. And so it's interesting because Knuckles comes to the realization on his own that Sonic isn't his enemy, and in this situation, he needs Sonic as his ally. So he basically invites Sonic to tag along with him as they chase after Eggman, and because Knuckles has been so weakened by not just fighting Sonic but also being electrocuted by Robotnik, that he can't go on and tells Sonic to go on without him. So all that is a really interesting backstory for Knuckles, and it really is kind of like interesting to see these characters go from soft enemies to rivals to eventually allies. That's basically like Knuckles was basically Sonic's original rival, and now they're basically kind of like soft allies. Well, not soft allies. Knuckles is 100% a member of Team Sonic and one of his closest friends, even though like back in like the beginning of the 3D age, Knuckles was more or less really willing to throw down against Sonic if he was properly manipulated. But the point is that I brought this up because it comes with the realization that the makers of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, they basically stole Knuckles' backstory and they gave it to Sonic. Yeah, literally speaking, think back to the first movie. Sonic is basically like this really powerful entity living in, I guess, we never know what planet or what island he's on. I'd like to think that it's Angel Island. He has the power of chaos speed, and that he basically is running around the island. And well, how do I put this? He's under the protection of Longclaw, and I'll have to talk about Longclaw when we get to the spoilers. The point is that effectively speaking, Longclaw has been keeping Sonic safe because she knows that people will want to try and control Sonic or come after him to take control of his powers. And so she sends Sonic to Earth to keep him safe from the Echidna tribe in order to hide his power and keep him safe. And we'll get to that in a minute. So the thing with the first movie is that Sonic actually grows up all alone. He basically spends like the next 8 to 10 years, or maybe is it 8 to 6 years? I don't know. He spends a great deal of time out in the woods all by himself and basically isolated from everyone else. And it's clear that Sonic doesn't want to be alone, but he has to be alone in order to basically properly hide and protect his power. You realize that Sonic basically was given Knuckles' backstory, except Sonic is a lot better at socializing with the people of Green Hills because he's been low-key interacting with them, just never on a formal basis. Whereas Knuckles in the games, when you're basically the only sentient being on a island that's floating in the sky, you don't really have all that many options of people and things to talk to. So, and that's what I find so weird, is that the character stories and the character arcs in this movie are so strange because I still get the sense that this character isn't exactly the Sonic we know, and it's fitting because this Knuckles isn't the Knuckles that we know. It's a very different interpretation of that character, but I think that it somewhat works for the purposes of the movie. One of the things that I was afraid of is because I examined how Idris Elba delivered his lines in the trailers, and I was afraid that he was going to deliver Knuckles' lines as a bit, how do I put this, primitive. Like, Knuckles is a member of a tribal clan, and he's basically been on his own for quite some time. He kind of speaks in a kind of broken statements, kind of like, almost, not necessarily like Tarzan, but sort of having that same inflection. We basically kind of like have that kind of character, that kind of archetype, and that came off as a bit jarring to me because I always kind of imagine Knuckles as basically being kind of like similar to Sonic in a lot of ways, having that kind of 90s bad boy attitude, kind of like the the prankster, the practical joker, the guy that doesn't necessarily take everything 100% too seriously. Because when Knuckles was conceived back with the creation of Sonic 3, he really was basically meant to just be a dark parallel to Sonic. He's that same kind of guy, except he's on the wrong side of the conflict. And he basically just, well, I know that the 3D games kind of made Knuckles into a more serious and somewhat more sympathetic character, but honestly, when I take a look at the video games and I see games like Sonic Heroes, with Knuckles being kind of like the laid-back older brother of the group who likes to tease Tails, the younger brother, and is basically overconfident saying, well, no worries, we've totally got this. Well, I can't help but imagine Knuckles as anything else. So, yeah. You know what this version of Knuckles comes off as? He comes off like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. Someone who isn't going to understand the lingo, the manner of speech that the teenagers are going to have, because he comes from a completely different culture, from a completely different planet. And it's interesting, considering his backstory, the idea that Knuckles in this version of the movie, I don't know if this is spoilers or not, but he doesn't have the same backstory that he used to. I'll get to that in the spoiler. So these are a combination of things that I both liked and didn't like, and it's interesting considering that that was Sonic's story. Sonic's story from the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie was basically the same as what Knuckles had when he was first introduced. Someone who's lived their life in extreme isolation and who only really just wants friends. Friendship, companionship, all that kind of things. And so what they ended up having to do with Knuckles, they had to almost fundamentally reinvent his character, while also managing to stick true to a lot of the lore of the games. So, I've talked about that. What is Sonic's story? What is his character arc in this movie? Well, I'm pretty sure you guys know from the trailers is that Sonic in this movie wants to basically use his powers to basically be a superhero, kind of like Batman. That whole you can't go around impersonating Batman kind of thing, Blue Justice, trademark pending. The thing about it is that Sonic is a bit reckless with his powers, and he doesn't understand that being a hero isn't about just coming in and saving the day. It's about basically taking responsibility to protect people from harm and making sure that nobody gets hurt. So, that's effectively the story that this movie was kind of building towards. The idea that Sonic has to basically take responsibility to protect people, not just charge headfirst into danger. And the idea of introducing Tails into the mix creates a variable in which Sonic knows that he needs someone to come along and help him, and so he asks Tails to basically come with him. So it poses a bit of a problem to consider that what Sonic ends up doing could potentially put Tails in danger, and he has to learn that he can't basically be reckless like that. He has to learn to get along, although he has to basically learn in order to basically not put other people's lives at stake in order to basically pursue what he wants. The thing about it is that by the end of the movie, the moral is basically Sonic Heroes. You can't basically go at it alone. You have to use the real superpower of teamwork. So that really was a highlight of the movie at the end, because let's face it, you all know how this movie is going to end. It ends with Team Sonic coming together and all three of them fighting against the evil Dr. Robotnik. So that was all basically really good, all really kind of nice and everything. And I feel like Sonic does learn that moral message, although I think it is a little bit muddled, because does he honestly how is it that Sonic can take responsibility to not put people in harm's way when the person that he arguably cares about the most in this movie puts themselves in harm's way in order to help them, in order to help him. So, anyways, hopefully, you guys can understand, the trailers, they gave a whole lot of this away, and the movie, basically, like I said, the movie does have a whole lot of little surprises and a whole lot of Easter eggs in there, and I really enjoyed them, and it is a whole lot of fun. Jim Carrey in this movie is so on point as Dr. Robotnik that I honestly really enjoyed him a whole lot more than I did in the first movie. There are some scenes where he might be a little bit over the top, but that's sort of what you would expect from a character from an actor like Jim Carrey, who's playing a character like Dr. Ivo Robotnik. Now, here's one of the things I'm a bit upset about, because I'll get more into this with the spoiler territory of the video. Dr. Robotnik, what this movie ends with a cliffhanger that implies that there is going to be a third installment in this film franchise. However, the thing about it is that Jim Carrey has stated that now that he is 60 years old, I honestly can't believe it either, he is considering going into retirement, which would mean that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would be his last movie project. And I just can't help but think, no. Look, I've basically had I've had my grievances with Jim Carrey over the years, but back when I was a kid, he honestly was one of my favorite actors. He was making some of my favorite comedies of all time, between movies like Liar Liar, The Grinch, The Mask, The Riddler from Batman Forever, The Truman Show. All of those movies were hilarious, and they really were enjoyable. I feel like Jim Carrey sort of petered out and went a little bit crazy in the interim, but with these movies, he finally found a medium in which he can return to form. He's finally basically getting that energy that he had in the 90s back. You can somewhat see that he basically has that elasticity in his body that he had when he played Ace Ventura for the first time all those years ago. And so the idea that he is considering retiring when he finally is playing a character that honestly shouldn't work, but just does, he manages to make the impossible work by basically managing to capture the essence of Dr. Robotnik so perfectly in live action that you really can't help but just get disappointed at the idea that he is retiring, because I honestly don't think I would want a third Sonic the Hedgehog movie that didn't include Jim Carrey, because you can't have Sonic without Dr. Robotnik. And considering what we know, what they set up for the third movie, yeah, Eggman is not gonna want to miss it. Let's just say that the shadows are falling. Anyways, so honestly, I kind of can't help but sort of feel like with the other things that go on in this movie, Tom as a character is great, and thankfully his role in the film is diminished to only basically be there when he's absolutely needed. He's not as mainstay or important to the film as he was in the first one, and that's basically like what you would expect. The first movie is all about the origin story, setting the stage for who this fantastic character is, who their opponent is, and what kind of world they live in. But part 2 is where the video game aspect of the franchise really takes over, and it is here where all that shines. So Tom and his wife, they're sort of basically just regulated to, I'm not going to say background characters because they're more important than that, but their presence in the movie, they're not necessarily missed. And I can't help but think that, like, we really do, these characters are fun and enjoyable, but they are kept where they need to be, because otherwise they would just distract from the characters that we're actually here to see, which is Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik. Those are really the only four characters that actually matter in the grand scheme of this movie. And of course, Tails, I really don't have all that much to say about Tails, because I really basically don't want to say it, because I honestly do think that my predictions were a little bit correct. Tails is in this movie, but he doesn't nearly have as much of a presence in this movie as much as I would have liked. Don't get me wrong, he still does a good job, and you can definitely enjoy Tails as a character, but it kind of does sort of feel like he's a bit of an afterthought, considering that the main conflict of the movie is between Sonic and Knuckles. It kind of feels like attention is pulled away from building the relationship between him and Sonic as much as it really could have been. And, well, I'm not saying that it's disappointing, I'm just saying that there could have been a whole lot more to explore with this character. But anyways, that is my reaction to Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It honestly is a movie that's far better than any video game movie that has ever come before, because it actually does feel like a video game. It really does adapt a whole lot from Sonic 2, from Sonic 3, from Sonic and Knuckles, to the point where it really does kind of feel like the game has come to life in proper live-action form. You can get the sense that the makers of this movie actually had a passion for the source material, especially now that they know how fervorishly the fans want the source material to be represented. I mean, that's one of the things that really just has to be addressed, because it really just makes you really do wonder about what they were thinking with that original design, and if they basically hadn't listened to us, we wouldn't have gotten such a great follow-up to that movie with this sequel. So, honestly, I would say that the movie is really a success. It is basically 10 out of 10. It is much better than the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which already in and of itself was a good movie. I just wouldn't say it was a great movie. But this one, it's not only a great movie, it is a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and I really enjoyed watching it. I look forward to watching it again. Like, when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, you can guarantee that I'm just going to be scooping it up as quickly as I can. And I'm just going to basically binge watch this movie as much as I did the original. So, anyways, that concludes my spoiler-free section of this video. Now, I'm basically going to proceed with talking about a whole lot of... I'm going to basically proceed in starting to talk about the details of this movie in order to basically kind of like give you a bit more of an explanation as to of all the specifics of what happens in the plot and what I wish happened in the plot, which honestly is one of the things, is that the thing that separates this movie from the original movie is that when it comes to movies that I like but don't necessarily hit the landing for me, it's movies that I spend my time rewriting in my mind to think how they could be better. This movie, however, I'm not doing that, because I'm genuinely so satisfied with how this movie turned out that, honestly, like, any changes that I would make would be superficial and not really affect the plot at all. I really think that this movie is solid, so we're just going to get into the plot details, the nit and gritty. So the point of what I'm getting at here is that one of the things that I really enjoy about this movie is that almost all of my predictions about what this movie was going to do ended up coming true. And I just love that. It's such an incredible trip to realize that something like that happens. And you just can't help but enjoy yourself. So finally, let's talk about it. This is your last chance. We're going to start talking about the spoilers for this movie. Turn back now. You still here? All right. So, how does this movie start out? It starts out with Robotnik on the Mushroom Planet. Like I said, he's trying to use he's built a Rube Goldberg machine trying to make sort of a coffee equivalent. And the idea behind it is that he's basically like he's been on this planet and he's surviving. He's been there for about 200 days now, which is when you realize from the last movie he had been on the planet for about 90 days. So that was about 3 months. 200 plus days. You might basically think that's about 9 months that he's been on the planet. So he's been on that mushroom planet for less than a year, and I guess his prediction came true. He really did get home by Christmas. So, it's just weird to consider that less than a year has passed since the events of the first movie, despite the fact that 2 years pass in the interim between making the movie, but that really is neither here nor there. The point is that Dr. Robotnik has been using the quill that he got from Sonic in the last movie to build a gigantic mushroom-based super antenna that basically is going to send out an energy signal across the entire galaxy in the hopes that someone is going to pick it up and hopefully come investigate the planet so that he can basically, I guess, sort of hijack a ride off the planet. What happens is that the electric discharge ends up knocking Eggman off the planet, but it ends up sending the signal out there, and so now he just has to wait for whoever comes a-knocking. He is lying there unconscious for, I guess, hours on end. The sun has set on the Mushroom Planet, and eventually a magic ring portal opens up, and strange-looking warriors emerge from the portal. They're not echidnas, though. They're more humanoid, and for some reason, they're wearing armor that resembles birds, maybe even owls. And so, that was curious point number one, because I can't help but wonder, who are these people? And is the movie going to give an explanation for them? It might have an explanation for them, but I don't 100% know. So, finally, the first one comes up and investigates Robotnik's body, at which point Robotnik reveals that he's actually been awake the entire time and just playing possum, and sets off a series of booby traps in order to basically overpower his new guests, and then tries to make his way for the portal. And of course, basically, that's when Knuckles emerges from the portal and stops him. Knuckles wonders where he got the quill from, and Robotnik says, "I can show you, if you like." And so that's basically how they come to form their alliance. The idea that Knuckles is searching for the source of the power that quill is radiating, which is basically, well, it's Sonic, and Robotnik is saying, "I'm willing to point you in the right direction." So, we cut back to planet Earth in Seattle, this time, for real. I saw the Space Needle. During an armored car robbery, and Sonic basically decides he's going to step in and basically stop the robbery in progress. The problem is that Sonic really isn't good at this, and the movie points out how bad Sonic is at doing this, because he flubs up that armored car rescue so badly that you really can't help but think, what was he thinking? Like, he doesn't even make any real attempt to actually stop the armored vehicle after he's disabled the hijackers. And Sonic basically kind of ends up causing a whole lot more damage than was really necessary. And it's just one of those moments in the movies where I just have to sort of grin and bear it, because it's not Sonic. It's not the Sonic that I know. Because the Sonic that I know would have been able to handle this easily without putting anyone in danger. Like, heck, the Sonic that I know wouldn't even stick around after basically, like, handling this. Like, the car would have been stopped, the robbers would have all been defeated, and Sonic would have just been a blur. Gone in the night. So, but Sonic wants to stick around because he wants people to, I don't know, get the idea that he's like this new vigilante superhero and whatnot. He sneaks back to Green Hills, going at Sonic speed. He tries to sneak back into bed, at which point he finds the map that Longclaw sent him here with, and a single feather from Longclaw that was hidden, folded in the map, something that we didn't see in the last movie, but he ends up feeling all nostalgic about Longclaw. Now, the thing about Longclaw is that she was the most confusing part of the original movie for me, and I honestly thought that if you cut out the entire prologue with her and the echidnas trying to get Sonic, the movie largely wouldn't be all that different. So I literally told myself when I saw Longclaw in this movie, please let her be important this time. Let her actually have bearing on the plot. Well, I ended up getting my wish. So, anyway, Sonic tries to sneak back into bed and go to sleep because he's been up all night fighting crime, but he doesn't get to, as Pretzel Lady and the dog come up and wake him up and say that he's basically supposed to go meet Tom and they're supposed to go fishing today. So, Sonic goes out on the lake and goes fishing with Tom, at which point Tom reveals that he has a newspaper from Seattle detailing what happened last night, and, well, he sort of scolds and reprimands Sonic for basically being reckless with his powers, and here's one of the strangest things that happen in regards to this movie. Like, Tom and Sonic, they establish a friendship in the first movie, and, well, it's clear that, like, that's what Sonic's story arc was. Sonic was lonely, and he wanted friends and companionship, but because Sonic is now living with Tom and his wife in their house, the dynamic has somewhat shifted to where Sonic isn't actually so much their friend as much as he is their teenage son. Like, there's even 2 points in the movies where Sonic basically refers to Tom as dad. Like, I find that to be weird. Awkward. Weird. But, I don't know. Maybe in a different context it could be touching. I just don't think that it actually worked here. So, anyways, we also get that scene from the original movie where Tails shows up. It's literally point for point the same scene. Tails appears from a magic ring, detects Sonic on his little device, and basically says, "I found him, I hope I'm not too late," and goes off to try and find Sonic. Now, here's one of the things that I honestly thought would be a whole lot more interesting, that the movie never really addresses all that much. You see, Sonic made a big deal about in the last movie that once Eggman basically powered up his flying machine with his quill, that it was able to move at a speed that was able to keep up with Sonic, even to the point where Sonic is moving so fast that the entire world around him has completely slowed down. Sonic literally says, "No one has ever been able to keep up with me before." So I felt like with the end of the first movie, with the introduction that Tails not only can fly with his tails, but actually can move fast enough to where he leaves a yellow trail behind him, I honestly thought that that would have come into play with the movie itself, in the idea that Sonic will realize that he's not exactly alone in the universe. There are other people out there who are just like him, other speedsters like him. Of course, I wouldn't say that it would be one-to-one. I honestly thought that there was going to be like some kind of like interesting trinity going on, where basically Sonic would have the speed force, Knuckles would have the strength force, and Tails would have the fly force. Yeah, he'd be able to fly, but not move as fast as Sonic can. He can somewhat keep up and like trail Sonic, but he's not actually as fast as him. But that's why I find it so confusing, because I'm actually hard pressed to remember if there was more than that one scene where Tails actually does move that fast, because I remember throughout the rest of the movie, even when Sonic and Knuckles are leaving colorful trails behind them when they're running super fast, Tails is keeping up with them, but he doesn't leave a trail behind him like he's supposed to, and I found that odd. So, anyways, the point of this movie is that Tom and his wife are supposed to be removed from the proceedings because they're going to Hawaii in order to attend the sister-in-law Rachel's wedding, and that's a good way to basically get them out of the plot. But you remember when I basically said that this movie overcorrected with Rachel as a problematic character? Yeah, she could have been cut out of the first movie entirely if you just edit the scenes around her. They basically wanted to make her more integral to the plot by basically featuring an entire plot point centered around her. And it really is just as cringy as you would think. It's a lot funnier. It's definitely funnier in this movie than it was in the last, but it honestly really just isn't all that important to the proceedings. And you remember how I basically said that every single prediction that I made about this movie came true? I feel really vindicated when it comes to the subplot of Rachel getting married, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Like I said, this movie takes place only 9 months after the events of the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Maybe more, maybe less, but it definitely hasn't been a year. So there was no hint or presence of her having been dating a man before this, especially in the first movie, and you're definitely going to know why. So the idea that she's jumping into a marriage only 9 months into a relationship, yeah, that is already suspect. Especially considering that everything about this woman is designed to be obnoxious. Who is going to tolerate her presence more than 4 seconds? So anyways, Sonic is left home alone because he uses his magic rings to send Tom and his wife to Hawaii and gives them a backup ring so that they can get back. They're going to be gone for 2 days, and Sonic has the house to himself. What does the kid do when the adults are gone? He trashes the place. Yeah, that's the one good thing about Sonic having such super speed, is because he literally can clean up any mess that he makes in a matter of seconds before anyone realizes what he's actually done, which is cool, which is good. Honestly, I'm jealous of that. So anyways, Sonic basically spends the first day basically just doing literally whatever he wants, making a mess of the house, even to the point where he basically fills a kiddie pool up with bubble bath and literally just submerges the entire living room in suds and foam. So anyways, Sonic is basically just hanging out with the dog at the home when Robotnik and Knuckles come through the portal and basically, introduce themselves. Robotnik says that he's back for revenge. Sonic basically prepares to attack him, only for Knuckles to step in and begin the iconic fight with Sonic. And, from then on, the movie basically is as you would expect from this point on, with Knuckles and Robotnik working together, trying to basically destroy Sonic. And, the first battle really shows that there is a difference between Knuckles and Sonic in terms of power, and it's interesting considering that Knuckles has a power that's similar to Sonic's, only, different, and he's superior to Sonic because he spent his life training to harness this power, whereas Sonic is undisciplined because he's been hiding from his power all his life. What I find interesting is that I was actually right in that the line, "Do I look like I need your power?" does not actually come from the Knuckles holding off Sonic's spin attack, but is instead said before Sonic uses his spin attack, which I actually... I honestly can't believe that I called it, because in the trailer, it doesn't make sense for Knuckles to be saying that to Sonic while he's spin dashing, because there's no way that Sonic is going to either hear him or actually behold what he's actually done by stopping his spin attack mid-dash. So... Anyways, it looks like Knuckles is basically about to kill Sonic when Tails shows up, having commandeered a police vehicle, and pretty much runs over Knuckles, kind of like a scene from Terminator 3, I think. Anyway, it's the whole, like, I'm on your side, get in the car, come with me if you want to live. Sonic basically jumps into the car as Tails tries to drive off and get them to safety. Robotnik actually jumps on the hood and basically, like, starts literally biting and licking at the glass, and Sonic's like, oh my god, he's gone rabid! Anyways, they drive off, and the thing about it is that Sonic thinks that they've outrun Knuckles, only to realize that Knuckles is in hot pursuit because he's a speedster just like Sonic is. So he's catching up with them. He gets onto the hood of the cop car and is basically punching through the roof, at which point Tails gets the idea to drive the car off the edge of the cliff and then basically grab Sonic and fly out using his two tails. Knuckles falls, and he clings to the side of the cliff using the spikes on his gloves, and I couldn't help but laugh and cheer at this entire sequence, because it's the introduction of Tails first using his tails to fly like a helicopter while holding on to Sonic, and it also is Knuckles being able to climb walls like he is in the game. It's so good. So, anyway, the point of what I'm trying to say here is that one thing that I'm leaving out is that while Sonic and Knuckles were fighting, Knuckles basically is alluding to why it is that he wants to destroy Sonic, because effectively, apparently Sonic is the reason why Knuckles lost everything. Here's basically what the long and short of it is. Knuckles is searching for the ultimate power, and he knows that Longclaw is the one who is responsible for protecting it, for hiding it from the Echidnas, and now that he's finally tracked down Longclaw's apprentice, Sonic, he's basically going to beat the secret information out of him until he finds, quote, the ultimate power. It honestly made me think of something else, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Robotnik hears talk about this supposed ultimate power and is really intrigued. So, anyways, after Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails go over the cliff and Sonic and Tails basically fly out to safety and Knuckles begins climbing back up, Robotnik sends a message to Agent Stone, who basically has set up a coffee barista shop in Green Hills, and... Here's one of the Easter eggs I just love. The coffee shop is called Mean Bean Company. It's a reference to Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, the spin-off game based on the Sonic cartoon. I love that. That's like one of the many references in this movie to the games that it just shows how much appreciation and love that they have for the fans of this franchise, and I am all for it. Like, 100% feed me more. Inject it into my veins if you have to. Anyways, so, Agent Stone literally reveals that the barista is actually a secret lair that he has built in case Dr. Robotnik was going to come back, and he ends up activating a satellite that Dr. Robotnik has had in space that sends down a gigantic egg-shaped pod that's filled with badniks and equipment for the Doctor to use. This is where Dr. Robotnik gets his brand new shiny red coat, he trims up his mustache using robots, he cleans himself up, gets new gloves, new goggles, and... Here's one of the things that I like. In addition to the returning egg-shaped drones, he now has flying hornet-shaped drones, like the bad nicks from the original game. What were they called? Hornet blasters? I don't know. I'd have to actually play the game to remember the names, but Stinglingers? No, that's Power Rangers. No. Anyway, so now that Dr. Robotnik is basically like up at full power again, he calls down to Knuckles climbing up the cliff and said, "You mentioned something about ultimate power." Knuckles is like, Our alliance is undone. You wanted to get off that planet, and you showed me where I could find the hedgehog. We're done with each other." At which point, Robotnik uses the drones to make a staircase so that Knuckles can get up the cliff faster, which is kind of it's a funny scene, but you'll have to see it in context. Once Knuckles gets to the top, Robotnik says, "I will help you find this source of ultimate power that you've been looking for all your life, at which point you will use it to destroy the hedgehog for me. Do we have a deal?" And so, basically they shake hands on it, which Knuckles basically, learns is an Earth custom of trust, at which point, because Knuckles is so strong, he literally crushes Robotnik's hand, and he basically, says that, because Robotnik was willing to suffer that amount of pain, he must be true to his convictions. So Knuckles basically takes it as a sign that he can trust him. So, anyways, Robotnik then reveals that he has the Eggmobile. It's basically kind of like a big version of the egg drones that are flying around. It's white, like a Apple product or whatnot, but it's the Eggmobile, and so I really appreciate that. So anyways, they go to meet Agent Stone in the Green Hills in order to basically plan their next move, and so they end up Knuckles basically does the exact same thing with Agent Stone. It's like he ends up working with him and basically shaking his hand and crushing it, and Robotnik's like, "Good news, Stone, that means he trusts you." This movie is funny on a whole lot of necessary levels. It's a whole lot more fun and a whole lot more comedic than the first one, but it also knows when to take itself seriously. So, okay, so let me just basically collect my thoughts. Sonic and Tails go to, what's his name, Dan? No, Dave. They go to Dave, the bumbling deputy sidekick from the first movie that basically is he works with Tom in the police department. They basically go to him to basically have a place to feel safe as they plot out their next move, at which point Tails reveals exactly what it is about Knuckles and what Sonic needs to know. Here's one of the things that is really strange about Tails in this movie. One of the things that comes off as a little bit disappointing, because when you get the teaser for Tails at the end of the last movie, it's clear that he knows Sonic is here in Green Hill Zone and is looking for him in order to basically for something important. So you're thinking, wow, so what if people from Sonic's world know about his existence, that he's been on Earth, and they need him to come back to their world in order to help stop some kind of crisis. So, how is it that Tails knows about Sonic? What is it that Tails needs to tell Sonic? Well, it's actually disappointing. You see, instead of everyone back on Earth knowing about Sonic's reputation and the power he has, it's only Tails that knows about it, because back when Sonic played the baseball game that caused that huge eruption of power that knocked out the EMP that knocked out the Pacific Northwest, apparently the energy blast was powerful enough to where it reached all the way back to Sonic's home planet where Tails was. So Tails basically detected the energy signature and homed in on it, and here's where it gets a little bit creepy. He knows all about Sonic because he literally watched the events of the first Sonic movie from a distance, he's been spying on Sonic all this time and was basically so amazed and impressed with everything that Sonic did. Yeah. Honestly, like, when it comes to... I know I said that I didn't spend my entire time thinking about ways to rewrite this movie, but I think that Tails might have needed a little bit of a brushing up when it came to writing his character, because it feels both significantly mundane when it comes to knowing how Tails knows Sonic, while also at the same time being incredibly creepy. They even established that Tails watches Sonic as he bathes. They play it off like it's a cute joke, but it really doesn't work that way. Anyway, Tails reveals that to Sonic that the reason that he came was to warn Sonic about Knuckles and Robotnik. The idea that that he knew that Knuckles was going to Earth in order to find him and confront him, because Knuckles is apparently the most feared and dangerous warrior in the entire galaxy. Yeah. I honestly can't see it after basically seeing how they treated his character in Sonic Boom, but still. I mean, can you just imagine the Sonic Boom memes that are going to come out of, like, everything that they did with Knuckles in this movie? Like, I can't wait to see them. They're going to be so funny. Anyways, so he only came to the Earth to warn Sonic about Knuckles, and he shows up late anyway. So, what is it that Knuckles... He also reveals what Knuckles actually wants, and it's revealed that Knuckles has been searching for the ultimate power, the Master Emerald, and that a long time ago, the Echidnas were actually in conflict with the Owls, the Longclaws race, because they basically were... Because the Owls were the ones who knew the secret of the Master Emerald and hid it away from the Echidnas to prevent them from getting their hands on it. So, that's why Knuckles has a grudge against Longclaw and why he's after Sonic, because he believes that Sonic knows Longclaw's secret of where the Master Emerald has been hidden all this time. So... But Sonic doesn't believe in it because he thought that the Master Emerald was just a myth, a bedtime story, despite the fact that on the map that Longclaw gave him is that picture of the Emerald. And, well, looking back, I can't help but think, did they have all this planned out? I thought that honestly, like, a lot of what they put on that map was just Easter eggs, but if they actually did have it planned out, that they were planning to make planning to make sequels to this movie, then it honestly makes the original design all the more puzzling and head-tilting, because they had to have known that the people would not have accepted a film series with that design. I really do think that there's something going on with that. So, but anyways, so here's one of the things that is strange about the movie, because Sonic has basically had that map the entire time, ever since the first movie, and yet when he touches the little Master Emerald symbol in the corner of the map, suddenly the map begins to glow blue. Now, it might be that it's basically like, let me see, it could be that was intentional to only activate when Sonic had started harnessing his power on a more regular basis, but it's never really explained. In fact, it's actually kind of like hand-waved away, like there's a jump cut. I really do feel like there was a jump cut in this scene, like we're missing a few frames of movie that might have actually been able to explain it a little bit better. So the map starts glowing, Sonic drops it onto the floor, and we basically... I have to basically say it. You know how in the original Sonic movie, he basically says that Longclaw was basically his Obi-Wan Kenobi, his Owlby-Wan Kenobi? Yeah. In this movie, the map, once it's activated thanks to his speed powers, it literally conjures up a hologram/force ghost of Longclaw, having recorded a message for Sonic that has been waiting for him to discover all this time. You see, Longclaw didn't send Sonic to planet Earth for no reason. She She specifically sent him there because Earth was actually the secret location that the owls of her race had hidden the Master Emerald. And we finally get the backstory of the Master Emerald and how it relates to the Echidnas. Wait, no, we actually don't. Alright, so I'll talk about that later. I'll let it come when it comes. So, effectively speaking, Longclaw basically tells Sonic that he has a pure heart that she has never seen before, and that's why she had to protect him. She sent him to Earth because she knows that with his power and his purity, he will be able to protect the Master Emerald from those who would seek to use it for evil. Because apparently the Master Emerald is so powerful, it can turn thoughts into reality. If it falls into evil hands, there'll be no stopping it. So, she basically charges Sonic with the task of protecting the Master Emerald. Now that basically the map has been activated, the map itself has changed to where it now points to an ancient temple somewhere in Siberia that contains a compass, which will point to the Master Emerald's location and finally reveal where it is. And so, Sonic, he takes one of his magic rings, throws it, and basically, has it come up in Siberia and asks Tails to come along with him. Tails hesitates because he's not a field man. He only came just to warn Sonic about the impending Knuckles attack. But Sonic says that he can't do this alone, and basically says, I'll look after you. I'll basically nothing's gonna happen as long as you're with me. So, Tails decides to go along for the ride because, well, Sonic is basically his hero. So, anyways, let me just put it, where am I getting here? Sonic and Tails basically start going up the mountain, and Dr. Robotnik actually he clones Tom's cell phone and basically sends text messages to Sonic and trying to basically do a trace on him. It's a pretty funny scene with Knuckles, and it is really entertaining and whatnot. And they managed to determine that Sonic is located in Siberia, and so they basically set out to go to Siberia in order to intercept him because they probably know that Sonic is now on the trail of the Master Emerald. So they follow Sonic, they find the Emerald, they get the Emerald, they destroy Sonic. So now, you guys remember in the non-spoiler section where I said that certain scenes of the movie go on for a bit too long? This is one of the scenes that I'm talking about, but honestly, part of this scene is so enjoyable that I honestly think just trim down the excess of this scene and it'll be a whole lot better. Just get to the point a little bit faster. You see, Sonic and Tails are in Siberia, but they're climbing the mountain in the middle of a blizzard, and in order to get out of the storm, they come across this tavern in the middle of nowhere. But of course, being a hedgehog and a fox, they don't want to scare the locals, so they disguise themselves from head to toe in ski and winter gear. They go into the tavern, and it's very clear that the people here in Siberia are not so friendly. They're very tough, they're very grim-looking, they're very hostile. I mean, it really is strange how over the top the movie just went with trying to make these people look threatening. Like, there's even an old woman sitting by the fire who's basically knitting something, and then she lifts it up to reveal that she's knitting a kind of red flag with a skull and crossbones on it. Basically symbolizing that if you guys come in here, you're going to die. Anyways, the two of them sit down at a table. Tails tries to use his device in order to basically order them food, a couple of beef stews, at which point the waitress brings them back 2 bowls of milk with beef tongues in them. And when Tails basically files a complaint, it's revealed that the translator he built isn't actually working, and he ends up insulting the waitresses. Sonic tries to defuse the situation, only for the bar patrons to close in on them, rip off their disguises, and basically decide, throw these monsters into the fireplace. Tails, however, basically searches through his database for some way to resolve this conflict. He manages to say one word that basically manages to calm everything down. They'd soon discover that the word that they basically chose was a means of a challenge to resolve the conflict. If Sonic and Tails win, they'll be allowed to basically stay or leave with their lives. But if they lose, they go into the fire. At which point, some guy gets up, he takes off his shirt, and challenges them to a dance competition. Now, I gotta admit, this dance sequence is pretty awesome, but like I said, it goes on for a bit too long. It's really only when Sonic and Tails finally take control of the situation by Sonic basically like plugging his cell phone into the stereo system and playing Uptown Funk that the scene finally gets to the point where it needs to be. So Sonic and Tails win the dance-off competition, and suddenly the entire bar has changed their perspective on the two monsters that they were being so hostile to minutes ago that they were literally going to burn alive by throwing them into a fireplace. It just seems like, yeah, this is, it's one of the scenes that is cool, but it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, at least in the last movie, you could get a sense that it did make sense because the guys who started the fight, they didn't like Tom and Sonic because they thought they were hipsters. I mean, it's a better excuse than just having literally no reason than just being hostile to strangers. So, anyways, Sonic and Tails are allowed to stay in the tavern, and they basically curl up by the fireplace for the night in a really cute scene that honestly makes me wish that this movie was more about Sonic and Tails' relationship and didn't have Knuckles to basically kind of overcrowd things, because it's one of the scenes that you really just imagine that would be in a Sonic movie. So the next morning, Sonic and Tails, they set out for the temple, and they manage to find it. There's one big, gigantic, owl-shaped door that leads into the mountain, and inside, they manage to find some murals, which explains the history between the owls and the echidnas. And this is the point of the movie that I honestly got the most excited, because everything that I began to predict about this movie started coming true. Apparently, centuries ago, 7 echidna warriors stole the 7 Chaos Emeralds and combined them all into one to form the ultimate weapon, the Master Emerald. The being that could control the Master Emerald would become a living god. No army could stand against him. He could rewrite reality itself and bring whole nations, whole worlds, whole realities to his feet. The owls, however, realized that no living being should have that power. They overpowered the Echidna warrior fused with the Master Emerald and took the emerald from him. They spirited it away and hid it away somewhere on planet Earth, and have been protecting the secret of it all this time. So, Sonic and Tails follow the chamber, where they get to a gigantic owl statue, where Sonic finds symbols on a kind of like a rolling puzzle kind of thing, and he matches up the symbols with the same symbols on the map, so that once those symbols match, it activates the mechanism, which reveals the compass. And I gotta say, I really like the design of the compass. I just wish that it did more in the game. I wish that it did more in the movie than what it ended up doing, because it's not really like a compass at all. It's kind of like a miniature planetarium, or like something where you have this big golden center and you have rings that surround it. And on each of these rings are tiny little circles that are kind of like planets or maybe electrons circling a nucleus. And every single one of these little dots is colored corresponding to the Chaos Emeralds. So you realize what it is that they're doing. And it's like, this is cool. I really like it. Unfortunately, at this point, that's when Eggman and Knuckles show up and they attack them. And it leads to a big chase down the mountain where Tails and Sonic split up. Sonic tells Tails to fly high and basically stay out of the danger. He's going to slope down the mountain using the carapace of one of the Eggman's destroyed drones as a snowboard. Knuckles ends up breaking one of the drones too to get one of his own and chases down after him. And Sonic basically snowboards down the mountain, something straight out of Sonic 3. He's dodging all the badniks and whatnot. He has his Quicksilver super speed moments, and he destroys them. Knuckles finally catches up to him and manages to hit him, knocking him off the edge of the cliff and causing him to lose all of his magic rings. And the worst part about it is that Tails doesn't show up in an attempt to recover them. It's honestly one of the more heartbreaking scenes when you have grown up playing the games as I have, because now you know exactly what's going to happen in the movie. You see, now here's one of the things that I like. Knuckles confronts Sonic on the edge of the cliff and says, "I lost everything because of you." At which point, Sonic says, all my life, people from your tribe have been trying to kill me. What exactly is it that I have done that made you lose everything? Knuckles reveals what happened on his side of the conflict that day. Knuckles was just a boy, and his father, the leader of the Knuckles tribe, led a campaign to go after Longclaw to recover the Master Emerald. So, that was the events of the first movie, where Sonic inadvertently led the Echidnas to Longclaw. So, Knuckles was gearing up and ready to join the fight, at which point his father told him, "No, you have to stay here." And it's weird because Knuckles' father tells him something that Tom tells him, something similar to what Tom tells Sonic. One day your day will come, but it is not today. You have to wait for that moment to choose you. So Knuckles stays behind, and that's it. He literally says none of them returned. So, narratively speaking, there is a huge narrative gap in this movie where, effectively speaking, we don't know how the conflict with Longclaw ended that day, because Longclaw got shot by an arrow and sent Sonic to planet Earth to protect him, but we don't actually see Longclaw die. However, I'm hard-pressed to believe that Longclaw, all by herself and injured as she was capable of wiping out the Echidna tribe that came to attack her. And yet, since none of them returned, that's what the film is implying. So something had to have happened that day. Anyway, I'm all for it because because the one thing that I wanted was for Longclaw to actually matter to the plot and be interesting, and now it feels like I'm getting my wish. So, anyways, Sonic basically sympathizes with Knuckles as he realizes that Knuckles has been alone all of his life, just like Sonic has, and Sonic reveals that I lost everything that day too, because Longclaw was raising me. Your tribe attacked and killed her, and I never saw her again. So, for a moment, Knuckles, his expression softens as he realizes that Sonic might not be the enemy that he thought that he was all this time, only for Tails to come in and attack Knuckles with one of his devices. He hits him with this, electrical device that stuns Knuckles. Sonic tries to stop Tails, but Knuckles, he thinks that Sonic was deceiving him. It's like, "You lied to me!" But Sonic is like, "No, it wasn't a lie, it was true." Knuckles breaks free and is about to attack Sonic. Sonic tries to throw the compass to Tails and tells him to get out of here, only for Robotnik to swing in and grab the compass and then shoot a missile at them. Tails ends up getting hurt by the explosion, and Sonic ends up trying to go and basically tend to Tails, at which point Knuckles retreats with Robotnik as he realizes the Hedgehog would choose to save its companion instead of pursuing us. Strange. At which point Robotnik says that it's the same old new friend, same old weakness. At which point Knuckles begins realizing that he might have chosen the wrong side of this conflict, that Robotnik is actually the dishonorable one, whereas Sonic might actually not be all that bad, because he's choosing to go back and help a friend instead of basically pursuing the enemy, despite the fact that they've got the compass. And also the explosion from Eggman's missile has caused an avalanche. So now Sonic has to snowboard down the mountain, carrying the unconscious Tails without his magic rings. So, here's how that goes. You remember that I mentioned that he gave a second magic ring to Tom so that he and Pretzel Lady could return home after their Hawaiian vacation? Well, Sonic ends up calling Tom in the middle of Rachel and Randall's wedding, at which point he basically, it creates an awkward scene because, like, the whole tension between Tom's subplot is that he wants to get Rachel to like him because she doesn't care for him at all, so he knows that if he does anything to ruin her wedding, she's literally going to kill him. So anyways, Sonic tells Tom to use the magic ring in order to open up a door to Siberia so that Sonic and Tails can escape with their lives. The problem is that earlier in the movie, you guys remember JoJo? Tom and Pretzel Lady's adorable niece from the first movie, Rachel's daughter, the girl that gave Sonic his shoes. She's actually the ring bearer. The ring bearer or the flower girl. Well, she has the rings in this movie, and she shows them to Tom, and Tom decides to tease her by taking one of the rings and hiding it in his pocket, at which point, aren't there supposed to be two rings? So he's making her think she lost the ring, only to, like, pull a magic trick by pulling it out of her ear. And you can already tell where this is going. Tom takes the magic ring out of his pocket and throws it, only to realize that he accidentally flubbed up and gave the magic ring to JoJo and accidentally kept Rachel's wedding ring. So, and now the ceremony is going on. Randall is about to put the magic ring on Rachel's finger, and Tom has to go up there and, like, try and explain himself without explaining himself. It's like, look, this is gonna sound weird, but I need that ring. I mean, it can't be that's like, sorry, that ring is a fake. This one is the real ring. JoJo accidentally switched them up or something, whatever. And because Rachel doesn't want to hear it from him, doesn't believe him, he ends up having to punch out her fiancé, Randall, in order to basically get the magic ring. He gets the magic ring from him, he throws it, he opens the door to Siberia, just as Sonic and Tails manage to fly through, followed by an avalanche of snow that destroys the pavilion and all the seats that are set up outside, and Rachel is pissed because her wedding day is ruined. Anyway, Sonic tries to explain it to Tom and Pretzel Lady about what's going on. He mentions that Robotnik is back, and you guys remember how I mentioned that all the predictions that I made about this movie were true, and how I found it to be incredibly suspect that within 9 months, some random guy who wasn't in the first movie suddenly decided that he was going to fall in love with Rachel enough to marry her? Yeah. As it turns out, suddenly all the guests at the wedding take out guns and tasers and surround Sonic. One of them shoots Sonic with some kind of electrified net that paralyzes him. Tails is still knocked out from the explosion, at which point Randall reveals he's actually CIA or something like that. He's a federal agent. And I basically, like, smiled and snapped my fingers because I was literally like, called it. I knew it. All of this was just a setup. They basically they basically catfished Rachel, literally. They call it Operation Catfish, in the hopes that they would be close enough to Tom and Pretzel Lady, in the hopes that one day Sonic would reveal himself and they'd be able to capture him. At which point, the military dude from the first movie, the guy who gave them the Olive Garden coupon, he shows up and reveals himself. He was a part of the wedding the entire time, so he basically reveals that this is what the operation was. It was all basically a scam to lure Sonic out of hiding. And he basically tells Tom and Pretzel Lady that their days of aiding and abetting and a dangerous alien fugitive are over. Tom basically tries to rescue Tom tries to rescue Sonic, who they're putting into a cage, by punching out a couple of federal agents. Randall steps in to stop him and basically tells him it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But despite the fact that Tom just assaulted a federal agent, he's basically put under arrest and is taken away with Sonic and Tails. So anyway, you remember how I mentioned that this movie is packed to the brim with with Easter eggs that reference the games? Well, apparently when Rachel demands an explanation for why they did this to her, why they went to such elaborate lengths to set up a fake wedding in order to catch an alien hedgehog that she wanted nothing to do with, the general reveals that the moment after Sonic arrived on Earth and basically battled Robotnik in Green Hills, Montana, the government decided that they needed to create a special branch of the government and or military in order to monitor extraterrestrial threats. The what's it called? The Guardian Unified Nations? Yeah, GUN. Gun. As in the gun organization from the Sonic Adventure games. And they reference it in the movie with Rachel saying, "Gee, you gotta be kidding me." That's a part of the movie that I find genuinely funny. Anyway, here's one of the things, is that, here's basically another point to the movie that I'm thinking, do we really need this to go on for as long as it does? And couldn't we, trim most of this excessive fat out? Because Sonic, Tails, and Tom are being led away by the government agents, at which point Pretzel Lady tries to warn the general. Robotnik is back, and he's after some kind of source of infinite power. If you don't let Sonic go, he can't stop him. The general takes her seriously and radios back to headquarters that Robotnik might be in play, but he's not willing to let Sonic go. So, anyways, Pretzel Lady and Rachel, they get the idea that they have to rescue Sonic, Tom, and Tails. But Rachel only goes along with it because she wants to find her fiancé, Randall, the guy who catfished her, and basically teach him a lesson. So Jojo manages to recover Tails' backpack because he dropped it when they crashed the wedding, and it's revealed that Tails has all of his gadgets in that little backpack, and they basically are going through them trying to find some kind of weapons that they can use to pretty much break into the facility and fight and save the three of them. So I gotta say that Tails' inventions in this movie are really useful. But it's weird, considering that we get an entire action scene where someone other than Tails uses them. So, Pretzel Lady and Rachel, they sneak into the hotel. They divide up the gadgets that Tails has invented, and then they go their separate ways. And we have an entire 5-minute long sequence that basically resolves Rachel confronting her would-be fiancé, trying to basically confront him, ask him if any of it was real, and it's do we really care about this? Do we really need this in this movie? Does anybody actually like this character to be invested enough in the fact that she got hurt this way? That she got manipulated into a fake wedding? Because as far as I'm concerned, the fake wedding is honestly the more interesting facet of what has happened to her, rather than her actually being an interesting character herself. So I know that sounds incredibly harsh, but it's really just, it's reality. It really just is reality at this point. So, anyways, it's a big action sequence where the general basically holds a taser on her and threatens her unless she stops. He pulls the trigger. Randall literally steps in front of the taser to take it for her, and then she threatens the general with a laser gun that Tails invented. Yeah, that really would have been useful to use in a lot earlier Tales. Why didn't you use it? So. Anyway, because he took the shot for her, they of course reconcile. He basically says that I broke the number one rule of undercover work. I wasn't supposed to fall in love, but I did. And I'm just left thinking, I really could cut this entire thing out of the movie, and I really wouldn't have lost anything. Because it's what I said in the non-spoiler section. They overcorrected by making Rachel essential, integral to the plot, but then they literally give this entire subplot to her where she is completely alone that literally could just be cut from the entire movie and you really wouldn't lose anything. And what's even worse is that we don't really see how Pretzel Lady sneaks into the hotel and gets past all the guards in order to rescue Tom and Sonic and Tails. We only get one glimpse of it where Rachel activates a little homing boomerang that Tails invented, and it actually takes out the 4 guards that are guarding the entrance, but that's it. What about all the other guards that have to be stationed all up and down the hallways and whatnot? It literally just jump cuts from Bridezilla making up with Catfish Agent to Pretzel Lady breaking into the holding room where they've got Tom and Sonic and Tails all locked up. And basically the only explanation is, how did you get here? And she basically says, that little fox friend of yours is into some weird shit. I mean, honestly, the implications. Anyway, Tails is still unconscious, but they manage to basically get all 3 of them out of the hotel, despite the fact that there should be more guards. And around this point, let's see, it's around this point that Knuckles and Robotnik have come to this small atoll following the compass, where they discover an owl-shaped emblem hidden in the sand, and the compass is actually a key. They insert the compass, it activates this big underwater bridge that opens up a gateway to an underwater temple where a huge beam of green light shoots up into the sky and signaling that that's where the Master Emerald is located. And, fortunately enough, this is just far out in the Pacific Ocean to where all of our main characters in Hawaii can see all of this and understand what's going on. Also, there's also this really sub-thing back in Green Hills where effectively Dave goes to Mean Bean Coffee in order to get some coffee in the morning, and he manages to see Agent Stone in there acting all evil and having all this Robotnik technology. A really funny Easter egg that basically shows what Jim Carrey would actually look like if they stuck true to Dr. Eggman's design, but he realizes that, oh my god, he's working with Robotnik again. He breaks into the coffee shop and basically places Stone under arrest and tries to interrogate him for more information about Robotnik. I had to mention that because it will be important. So, anyways, Sonic basically sees the green energy shooting up into the sky and realizes that Tails is still unconscious. Sonic decides that he's the only one who's fast enough to be able to get out there and put a stop to this, and everyone's telling Sonic that he doesn't have to go at it alone, at which point Sonic says that he does, because he messed up. Tom told him that the day would come where he would get to be able to prove that he's a hero and use his powers for good. He says that day came, but he messed it up because of what happened with Tails. Tails has basically been saying that Sonic the Hedgehog is his hero this entire time, and because of that, Sonic let him tag along and follow along with him on this adventure, and it nearly got him killed. So now he's basically saying, I'm not going to let anybody get hurt or risk their lives to fix my mistake. I've got to put a stop to this myself. So, one of the things that I really like about this movie is that they bring up the fact that Sonic can't swim from the video games. He can't swim, and therefore he's terrified of water, which is something that I honestly wish they had brought up in the first movie, because it seemed like Sonic was perfectly able to just crash headfirst into the cold, dark water of the Pacific Ocean without so much as without really any sort of, damage. And the point is that here his fear of drowning is a whole lot more prominent, because Robotnik and Knuckles are out on an atoll, and he's on Hawaii, and the atoll is hundreds of miles away. The light is so bright that you can see where it's coming from. Sonic has to basically run fast enough to run on the surface of the ocean in order to get there. So Sonic basically charges head first, runs on water, and it looks like that Sonic is going to make it until the waves start getting worse, and he eventually gets overtaken by the waves. And I'm thinking something completely different, that he's going to be washed all the way back to Hawaii, at which point Tails is going to show up in the tornado and say, "You can't do this without me." Because at this point, Tails actually has woken up. He actually woke up as soon as Sonic left, but he's still hurt, so they're saying, "Take it easy, you can't, you're still hurt." So, anyway, but as it turns out, Sonic doesn't get washed all the way back to Hawaii. He ends up on the atoll where the Emerald Temple is. He washed up on the shore. It kind of looks like something out of Crash Bandicoot, now that I think about it. Anyways, Sonic pursues Eggman and Knuckles into the temple, and this is honestly one of the funniest parts of the movie, because Knuckles and Robotnik are going through the temple, and they're dodging all these booby traps, and they're running away from a gigantic spiked boulder, and Robotnik is like, "I don't want to die like this! It's too derivative!" It's a reference to Indiana Jones. That's one of the things that I like about this movie, because it's that sort of self-referential humor it's ordinarily, I would be annoyed by that kind of humor, but with this movie it kind of works, because you realize just how derivative this movie actually is, but its derivativeness is actually its strength. I'll have to make another video talking about this, because right now my thoughts are cluttered. So anyways, Robotnik basically decides he's going to use his drones to navigate through the temple in order to find the path of least resistance to get to the emerald. The camera pans out, and you see that the temple is actually a gigantic labyrinth, and then you recognize the water slides that are coming through. You realize that the Emerald Temple is Labyrinth Zone, as in the Labyrinth Zone from the Sonic the Hedgehog game. The penultimate and, quite frankly, hardest, most frustrating level in Sonic the Hedgehog. So, Sonic ends up falling down the waterfall pathway that it gets down to the temple, and he decides to basically speed through the maze in order to catch up with them. Knuckles ends up breaking down the walls in order to get to the center faster, at which point the Master Emerald just lies before them. Knuckles and Robotnik approach it, at which point Robotnik begins to very subtly, evilly, state that he no longer needs Knuckles and is about to tase him, at which point Sonic bursts in through the ceiling of the room and challenges Knuckles to a fight, saying that if he wants to get the emerald, you're gonna have to go through me. So we get this really cool fight scene between Sonic and Knuckles, what the movie has been leading up to all this time, and it really is a really cool battle, especially because you get to see all the cool abilities. You finally get to see Sonic finally have the advantage over Knuckles, who has basically just been dominating him left and right throughout the entire movie. Sonic is faster, he's smaller, he's lighter, he basically uses his speed to pretty much hold the advantage over Knuckles. And I just love it. There's one section where he manages to basically pin Knuckles to the stairs and gives him a repeated series of homing attacks. It really is a really great, really fun action scene, and I just really loved it. But unfortunately, as the two of them are fighting, it works out for Robotnik because Robotnik has been gradually making his way towards the Emerald. Now, all this sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's basically a live-action reinterpretation of how Sonic and Knuckles the game ends, with Sonic and Knuckles finally having a showdown in the Temple of the Master Emerald, while Robotnik sneaks in to steal the Master Emerald himself. Knuckles manages to get a good hit on Sonic and knocks him down, and it picks up a boulder and is about to crush him, at which point Sonic points out that Robotnik is stealing the Emerald, and it takes a bit of convincing, but Knuckles does turn around to see what Robotnik is doing, and he realizes that Sonic is right. Robotnik, that wasn't our deal! At which point, Knuckles... It's kind of weird because Knuckles all this time basically knows, he's garnered the sense that Robotnik is not an honorable man, and that their alliance is mostly just a necessary evil, and yet Knuckles says, "You were my friend." And yet, earlier in the movie, Robotnik literally explains what friendship means to him. That friendship is just a weakness that weak people have, and that strong people exploit in order to beat the weak people. So, Robotnik takes the Master Emerald, and it fuses with him, basically transforming him into what I call Chaos Robotnik, or Chaos Eggman, whichever one you guys find better. And then suddenly, he teleports out of there, and the Temple of the Master Emerald begins to collapse now that the Emerald is gone. Knuckles, unfortunately, gets pinned by a falling pillar when Sonic tells them that we need to get out of there, and unfortunately the ocean is now pouring in, so the temple is flooding, just like Labyrinth Zone. So anyway, Knuckles is pinned, and it's filling up with water. The temple is filling up with water, and Knuckles is losing his last breath. And Sonic is like thinking, why does it have to be water? He dives back under to try and rescue Knuckles. And I really love this scene because it's once again referencing the video games, because Sonic is running out of breath, but a huge air bubble rises up, and Sonic literally just sucks it into his mouth in order to get like an extra bit of air. The only problem is that I couldn't recognize the musical cues. Now, I need to take a minute to talk about the music, because I'm pretty sure that the Dr. Robotnik theme that they use in this movie is a reference to the I Am Eggman music that was used in the games. When I saw the trailers for this movie, some of the trailers actually did use an orchestral version of the Sonic the Hedgehog the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Emerald Hill theme, and I thought that was cool. So I was disappointed when I didn't hear the danger, you're running out of breath musical chime from the Sonic games in this movie. You know, that whole so Sonic is running out of breath. He's trying to lift the boulder off of Knuckles, but Knuckles actually manages to regain consciousness and sees that Sonic is trying to save him, so the two of them work together on the count of 3 to lift the pillar off of Knuckles and get him free. So, Knuckles gets free of the boulder and immediately swims for the surface, leaving Sonic behind. And Sonic can't swim, so he basically doesn't know what to do. He's reaching out, trying to basically push himself up, and he's gonna lose consciousness. At which point Knuckles dives back in and saves him, realizing that the hedgehog can't swim, so he has to go back and help him. The next scene basically shows them both sitting on the beach, basically catching breath, and Sonic is like, "You saved my life. Why?" Knuckles is like, "Don't talk to me. I am not in the mood." Because Knuckles' entire perspective has basically just been shattered by everything that's happened, so he's not in the mood to indulge Sonic. He basically, after Sonic keeps prodding him, he's basically like, "I saved you because you saved my life," which gives you some kind of tactical advantage that I don't understand, because he still thinks that Sonic is his enemy. At which point he says, "I didn't save you to gain some kind of advantage. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. I couldn't just let you die like that." I have literally been trying to destroy you since I met you. Why would you show me mercy? And so Sonic basically reveals that that's what heroes do, and he imparts the same words of wisdom that Tom gave to him at the beginning of the movie, and, well, it's basically Knuckles coming to terms with the fact that he screwed up very badly. He trusted the wrong person and led that person to the source of ultimate power, and now that ultimate power has fallen into the wrong hands. And worse, the two of them are stuck, exhausted on this atoll in the middle of nowhere, and they have no idea where Robotnik went or how or what they're going to do to stop him. At which point, Tails arrives flying the tornado. Now, here's something that I can't help but be a little bit disappointed about. The tornado is literally one of the most underutilized things in this movie, despite the fact that it's such an iconic piece of Sonic's history. You see, depending on the continuity that you follow, the Sonic's plane, the blue tornado or red tornado, whatever it is, it's literally the thing that cemented Sonic and Tails' friendship. And I honestly wish that it played more of a role in the movie. The first time we see it, it's a red biplane that is being used to fly a banner of Rachel and Randall forever during their wedding ceremony. And I'm thinking like, hey, so that's where the plane comes from. I can't wait to see Sonic and Tails use it. The problem is there really is no real build-up to them using it, and like I said, I didn't want to spend my time rewriting this movie because I don't think I need to. If I were to make an improvement, I would have it changed to where, well, it would be a bit awkward. It would need like an entire complete the entire script would need a facelift in order to basically get like to position the characters where they need to be. The red biplane would be like an old crop duster that is somewhere in Green Hills that nobody's basically used for a while, but Sonic, he's always been fascinated with it. He always wanted to basically take it out and get it flying, but he doesn't know how to fix it. When Tails shows up, Tails does have the expertise to fix it, so they basically decide Tails is going to fix it, we're going to get this thing flying, and we're going to basically use it to fight against Robotnik, that kind of thing. So just having Tails show up in the red tornado with no explanation of how he got it, or if he was allowed to take it, if he stole it, it's really just kind of like a thing. Anyways, Robotnik ends up teleporting back to Green Hills Zone to the Mean Bean coffee shop, where Dave has basically got Agent Stone handcuffed to a chair and is interrogating him. At which point, Robotnik has basically gone off the deep end because he has pretty much absorbed omnipotent, godlike power and basically sets Agent Stone free and basically subdues Dave in his place. At which point, Stone ends up opens up the blinds to reveal that Dave already called in the military and special forces, and they've basically got the coffee shop surrounded. A helicopter arrives on scene with the general guy from earlier, with Tom, with his wife. All the main characters are basically getting where they need to be for the climax. Robotnik emerges, Chaos Eggman emerges from the coffee shop, and basically he's not intimidated by all their weapons and whatnot, at which point they try to place him under arrest, and he shows off the new power that he's attained. Like it was said, the Master Emerald has the ability to turn thoughts into reality, and Eggman literally just begins magnetoing all the metal in the tanks and military vehicles that they're surrounded with. He even starts taking up the helicopter, a passing train, cars, whatnot. He's breaking all of them down to their to individual pieces and creates a kind of chaos tornado. And in the tornado, he's building something. When the tornado ceases, he's built the Death Egg the giant Death Egg robot, and it's awesome. It looks really, really cool. It's basically like, yep, that's it back there. It's different because it's powered by the Master Emerald inside Robotnik. Its eyes are supposed to be green. It turns red later in the climax, but I'll get to why that is later. And it's basically like one of those things. It's like, why couldn't we have had machines that looked this cool in the first movie? But anyways, the military basically realizes that they can't stop this thing, and Robotnik is basically going to trash Green Hills in as his first stop in his plan for global domination, because he's going to use the power of not just the Emerald and his machines to basically enslave humanity, take over the world, and basically create a robot empire. At which point, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles arrive flying on the tornado and basically begin a strategy to attack the giant egg robot. Knuckles decides to leave the two of them behind by jumping off the plane and falling into the forest, ready to attack the robot himself, whereas Sonic basically has Tails fly in and basically try to distract the robot, trying to get its attention away from the citizens of Green Hill. And, well, it is a really cool action scene with Robotnik basically controlling the robot via, I guess, kind of like a kind of neural interface. His chaos energy allows the robot to basically follow his physical movements inside the robot's head. It's kind of cool. But they also use it to basically show off how goofy of a character Robotnik is, with the robot basically dancing around a little bit. So it's cool, but at the same time it's pretty silly. But it's the kind of silly that's just silly enough where you can still get behind it. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, so the big climax is all about trying to stop the giant Eggman robot, and it's packed to the brim with a whole lot of weapons. The thing that's disappointing is that the sequence with the tornado is actually so short because the robot ends up destroying the plane and the two of them end up crashing. So at this point, it seems like the robot is all but indestructible, especially because Knuckles comes in and tries to attack the robot himself, at which point he only just barely manages to make a dent in it, and so Robotnik sends out a whole fleet of egg drones to try and attack Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, at which point they basically get together and strategize. We just attacked this thing with some of our best, with our best, and it didn't even put a dent in it. And Sonic poses the idea that we can't beat this thing on our own, but if we work together, we might be able to bring it down. And so, here is basically the climax of the movie where Team Sonic finally unites for a common goal and gets ready to take on the big bad guy once and for all. And it's really an incredible moment to realize. It's like, to me, this is just as, if not more, impactful than seeing the Avengers finally assembled on film for the first time, because this is friggin' Team Sonic. This is something that I literally never thought would happen in my lifetime because of the bad reputation of video game movies and how hard it seemed to be to actually adapt something as abstract as all of this into a live-action theatrical movie that you could not only laugh at and have fun with, but also take seriously and get invested in. But anyway, they start talking about how they gotta find the robot's weak point, at which point Knuckles keeps bringing up we need to attack the groin. Sonic then postulates the idea that he himself is actually Eggman's weak point, because Eggman hates Sonic so much, he lives rent-free in his head, that Eggman will do anything to destroy him. So Sonic will distract the robot, lead it out of Green Hills, lead it away from the town. Meanwhile, Tails and Knuckles will sneak up on the robot, break in, and attack Eggman to get the Emerald away from him, in the hopes that without the Emerald, he won't be able to power the robot anymore. So Sonic's plan works. He gets Robotnik to chase him, attacking him out in the woods, destroying a bridge and whatnot, and it actually is pretty bad. Sonic ends up getting in pretty bad shape. Tom and Pretzel Lady, they end up commandeering some guy's truck. I think it's Crazy. Is it Crazy Steve? Anyway, I couldn't tell. They end up commandeering a truck, and they go after the robot, trying to help Sonic. Meanwhile, Tails and Knuckles... I actually kind of like the dynamic that they show between Tails and Knuckles, because Tails is this young, wide-eyed, optimistic little kid, and Knuckles is this hardened warrior who's basically seen combat. It's that kind of dynamic that's like this odd couple kind of thing that is like so funny. And we finally get Knuckles as I expected him to be, and it's basically just Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy. Tails says, "Man, you're heavier than Sonic. That is because I am 1,000,000% muscle. Fly faster, Fox." That's basically what I expect a kind of a tribalistic warrior-type Knuckles to be like. So, they end up climbing up the robot as the robot is distracted with trying to kill Sonic. At which point, Tails cuts into the robot's head and then breaks through. I should mention that Tails has a device that allows him to generate holographic replicas of himself that basically creates like a whole flock of Tails that swarm into the machine and try to basically confuse Eggman. He shoots green lightning bolts at them until he decides to basically just end it all by shooting a whole bunch of waves that take out all the holograms and finally hit the real Tails. But Eggman is distracted enough to where Knuckles can come in and finally deliver the punch that knocks the Master Emerald out of him. The robot is depowered and begins falling over. The Master Emerald falls out of the cockpit, and Tails and Knuckles try to get away, and Sonic tries to get to a safe distance. But it's clear that Sonic is pretty worse for wear, because distracting the robot, he ended up getting hurt, and he's tired, he's winded, and so now it doesn't look like it's all that good. The worst part about it is that even though Robotnik has lost the Master Emerald, the robot still has a secondary source of power, which he then activates, resulting in the red eyes, and the robot gets back up and starts coming after Sonic. Robotnik is obsessed with getting the Emerald back because he knows it's the key to success, whereas Sonic knows he has to get the Emerald to keep it away from Robotnik in order to basically prevent him from having all that power again. It's a really tense scene where you think that every single step the robot gets closer to Sonic. Sonic can't move as fast as he's supposed to because he's injured, he's tired. You think that at any moment the robot is going to lift its leg and basically crush Sonic underneath, and you just think, come on Sonic, you gotta get the Emerald, come on. At which point, Tom and Pretzel Lady ride in on the truck. They manage to scoop up Sonic just as he gets the Master Emerald right before the Egg Robo's foot crushes him. And it looks like the three of them are going to get away. Unfortunately, Eggman shoots, a missile, a laser, or does he just step on them? He shoots something at the truck and manages to blow up the back half and flips the truck over and basically kind of has all of them pinned. At which point, Sonic has the Master Emerald and is trying to basically get it to work, trying to use its power so that he can basically turn it around on Robotnik. At which point, the Master Emerald breaks. You remember how I said I love the fact that I was able to predict how this movie was going to go? Because I literally said, and I hope, and the eccentric Mr. Chaos can back me up on this, I literally said, I hope that if there is only one emerald in this movie, that it is the Master Emerald, and that during the climax, it breaks apart to create the 7 Chaos Emeralds. I would really like for that to happen. And when the Master Emerald breaks, we know how, in this movie, how the Master Emerald was formed. We see 7 distinct tiny little colorful pieces dropping. And that's so weird, like, the size of them in this movie. You imagine them being like much bigger than they are because of how you see them in the games, and here they're actually pretty damn tiny. So, I mean, the Master Emerald is supposed to be big enough to where characters like Sonic and Knuckles can stand on it. The Chaos Emeralds are supposed to be large enough to where you basically can holding one takes up your entire hand. So, but anyways, um, it seems like Sonic, Tom, and Pretzel Lady, they're all basically pinned down, and Robotnik is towering over them, shooting lasers and creates a ring of fire around them to keep them from escaping, because he's now getting ready to kill them all and secure his revenge, at which point Sonic and Tom and Pretzel Lady, they basically assure that they're family, they love each other, they're not going anywhere, they're gonna stay together no matter what. At which point, Robotnik lifts up his giant robot foot, brings it down to crush them, at which point the Chaos Emeralds rise up from the broken shards of the Master Emerald, they spin in a circle, and absorb into Sonic's body. Yep. That's right, people. It is happening. The foot comes down on the three of them, and everyone thinks that they've been killed, at which point Robotnik detects a huge spike in energy, and something causes the robot to rock back and forth, at which point something begins lifting the robot's foot. It's Sonic. He's now glowing golden. Yep. It's Super Sonic. I honestly couldn't believe it. I mean, I honestly cannot believe I've seen a live-action movie where Sonic goes supersonic. It's the one thing that I really hoped that this movie would do, and it did. It was so incredible. Anyway, Sonic basically breaks through the robot's foot and flies up in order to basically, confront Eggman. He spins around the robot's head, basically cuts off the head, exposing Eggman inside the cockpit, and Eggman tries to punch him with the robot's fist, only for Sonic to literally hold it off with one hand and then destroy the entire arm. The Robotnik tries to do it with the other hand as well. Sonic destroys that hand. Sonic basically then begins flying all around the robot, just ripping it apart from the inside out, flying through it, bursting through it like a bullet, until finally the robot is basically depowered. It can't stand up anymore, and he finishes it off in the most Sonic the Hedgehog way imaginable, in a reference to Sonic 06, the opening scene where he attacks all those Eggman robot drones until the final one, he just taps with his foot and just sends it over the edge. As the robot basically is teetering, Sonic just taps it with its foot, and Eggman's like, oh, it's like that, huh? And so the robot falls back, and Eggman presumably falls to his death. Super Sonic is victorious. I'm actually kind of surprised, because I honestly thought that Sonic was going to save Eggman from the fall, because honestly I think it's worth it to basically capture Eggman alive and put him in jail where he can no longer basically have access to his resources and whatnot. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So Super Sonic lands nearby, and Tom and Pretzel Lady rush towards him, at which point Knuckles stops and is like, no, you mustn't touch him. He has absorbed the ultimate power. He is no longer the Sonic that you knew. And for a second there, Sonic begins conjuring up a golden tornado, similar to what Chaos Eggman was conjuring up, using his powers to create something. For a second there, you think it's going to go Archie Comics with Psycho Super Sonic, and that would be really interesting, but instead, Sonic uses his godly, omnipotent superpowers to create a chili dog. It falls out of the sky and lands in his hand, and he eats it. He's like, oh, that is so good. You guys gotta try this. He creates another one. It falls out of the sky, and it lands on Knuckles' head, and he's like, never mind. He's still the Sonic that you know. It's such a funny moment, and it's such a funny way to end the scene, at which point Sonic basically releases the Chaos Emeralds from his body, and they all fly up into the sky, presumably to be scattered all across the world, and we don't really know what truly happens to them. Tom and Pretzel Lady, they go in and they hug Sonic, so glad that he's alive, and they're so proud of him for managing to defeat Robotnik like this. Tails is like, Sonic, you just became the most powerful being in the universe, and you gave all that power up. Why? Because he's like, yeah. Sonic plays it off as like, yeah, the whole golden god thing was pretty cool for a while, but I think that blue is my color. It's kind of like the idea that Sonic has never really craved power. He doesn't want it. He doesn't feel the need to basically be that kind of that powerful. He doesn't. And he knows that being a true hero is knowing when to use power for when it's needed, and knowing when it's not needed. So here's honestly one of the things I was most surprised at, because I thought that from this point in the series, the Master Emerald was only created because it was fused all the Chaos Emeralds together, and that now that the Chaos Emeralds were free, they were going to be the MacGuffins for future movies. Instead, Knuckles takes up all the shards of the Master Emerald, and just like in the video games, he repairs it. So we've got the Master Emerald again, and he's like, I've spent my whole life looking for this. Now that we have it, what do we do with it? What do we do with all this power? At which point, Tails reveals that back in the old days, there was a legend that there were two great classes of heroes that protected the Master Emerald, which is what I honestly thought that protected the ultimate power, which I think were the Chaos Emeralds before the Echidnas took it for themselves, which I think alludes to the idea that Sonic is the speedster, Knuckles is the muscle, he's the guy with the strength. So I think that they're the two types of heroes, at which point Sonic says that, Knuckles says that all those heroes are long since gone, and Sonic says, that's why we're going to make a new generation of heroes. The three of us. And Knuckles says, let's make a solemn vow that we will never allow this emerald to fall into the hands of evildoers. We will protect it no matter what. And so Team Sonic comes together with the agreement that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles will protect the Master Emerald from falling into evil hands. And it's just so great because now we get, like, a scene that I honestly wish that we had more of in the movie. Like, we should have had a scene like this earlier in the movie, but it ultimately kind of feels more like this movie is sort of like not necessarily a sequel, but more like a continuation, a part 2 of the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, because now Sonic, Tom, and Pretzel Lady are back at the baseball field, and they're playing a game of baseball with Tails and Knuckles now joined in on their family, with Tails basically winding up the pitch and Knuckles getting ready to stepping up to bat. And it's clear that Knuckles doesn't get the point of the game. It's like, why am I angry at the enemy ball? You're not angry at the ball. This is a game. We're doing this for fun. Just use the bat and try to hit it. So Tails ends up throwing the ball. Knuckles swings, but instead of swinging the bat, he instead swings a fist and ends up knocking the ball through the scoreboard. It ends up it's so powerful it breaks through the scoreboard, and Knuckles is celebrating his victory, running around the bases. And it's funny because he doesn't really understand, running around the bases. It's like, if my journey ends where it begins, what is the point of running? So he ends up taking first base, second base, third base, and comes all the way home. And they realize that was their only baseball, and Knuckles basically destroyed it. So what the heck, let's go get some ice cream. So this is honestly the part that I honestly expected more of, because they depict Knuckles as being this really serious-minded warrior without really getting into the kind of the simple, not understanding, fish-out-of-water nature that Knuckles is supposed to have. So I honestly wish that the movie had more of this, because it really does show that Knuckles, he really is the best character in the movie, because he's funny, and now that he's basically on friendly terms with Sonic and Tails, you can kind of see that friendly nature of him come out, because it's now Sonic and because now they're all going out for ice cream, and he's like, what's ice cream? It's a dessert. if you like fun, you're going to love it. It really is a fun way to end the movie. Tom and Sonic have this heart-to-heart moment where Tom is proud that Sonic has real friends of his own that are actually more on equal terms with him. Sonic has his wingmen, Tails and Knuckles. Team Sonic finally unite on screen and whatnot. And the movie ends with that line that I mentioned where Sonic basically accepts Tom as his dad, and it's weird. Anyways, the movie ends with them driving off in the truck. Knuckles basically excited that he's going to get ice cream with sprinkles. They pan down on the Master Emerald, which they left in the cooler back at the baseball field, only for Sonic to rush back and get it. It's like, can't leave this lying around, and then goes back to the car. So, much like the first movie, it has the stylized end credit scenes that are based off of the video games, and it really is a charming nostalgia trip to watch it all, and it really is lovely. But then we get the moment that we've all been waiting for. Yeah, we get the military the agents of GUN, cleaning up the mess that the Egg Robo left behind from the battle, and it's clear that Dr. Robotnik's body hasn't been found. The general, however, is 100% certain that nobody could have survived that fall, so he's basically complacent with the idea that Robotnik is most likely dead. At which point, one of the soldiers that's helping the cleanup effort passes by them. He removes his mask and reveals it's actually Agent Stone in disguise. So that's kind of like a sort of a hint that possibly... because I don't think that Robotnik is dead. I think that if anybody could have survived that fall, it probably would have been him, because Agent Stone in this movie is actually very weird. In the first movie, he was just a sycophantic yes man to the point where he was just going along with what Dr. Robotnik says and does because he was his superior. In this movie, he seems genuinely obsessed with Dr. Eggman to the point where literally he's playing dress-up with Dr. Eggman, trying to pick out new villainous outfits for him, and he's so excited at the prospect that Dr. Eggman is back, so... It just seems so weird because it didn't seem like they had that kind of relationship in the original movie. It seemed like he was just a no-name lackey that Robotnik could push around easily and basically get him to do what he wanted. So this amount of loyalty to him is so strange, and yet here at the end, he doesn't seem all that distraught at the idea that Dr. Robotnik is dead. He seems almost confident that he's alive and out there because he scoffs at the idea of the general thinking that he's dead. But, so, it really only depends on whether or not Jim Carrey is willing to come back for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and I really hope that he does, because his version of Robotnik, it's not perfect, but it's the closest approximation that we're probably ever going to get to Dr. Ivo the Eggman Robotnik in live action, and I'm glad that we have it. So, I really hope he comes back for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, because Sonic 3 is not a movie to miss. Much like how Sonic 1 ended, I am so hyped off of Sonic 2 that I want Sonic 3 right now. And why? Well, I know I gave this warning at the beginning of this hour-long segment, but this really is your last chance. If you don't want to know in the post-credit scene, because it is mind-blowing, turn back now. Effectively speaking, when the general is talking with one of his agents, they basically begin talking about when they were purging Robotnik from their government's database, they discovered a secret file. A file that goes back about 50 years into a secret government science experiment. A capsule that has basically remained buried that no one is supposed to know about. The movie then cuts to this underground facility where someone is opening this capsule, and I honestly couldn't believe it. When I saw the shoes, the camera is panning down on the glass cylinder, and I'm thinking, no, it can't be. But it is. All you could see are his shoes, and it's true. The film ends with the Doctor basically realizing that the file is alluding to Project Shadow, and then we see him. It's Shadow. Shadow the Hedgehog. He's dormant in the pod, but whoever just activated this little capsule he's contained in is waking him up and letting him out, because the final scene of the movie ends with Shadow opening his glowing red eyes. When I saw that this afternoon, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was one thing that we were getting this movie that not only included Tails, but also brought in Knuckles. Now, I heard rumors that with Part 3 they wanted to get characters like Amy involved. I was wondering how that was going to go, but now we're getting Shadow? Oh my god! Like, I earlier in this video, I talked about a problem that's not necessarily a problem with Sonic in the games. Sonic doesn't actually have a character arc, character development, or a character story, because Sonic doesn't need them. But the detriment of that is that Sonic becomes a less interesting character when compared to other characters in the franchise. The character that I used as an example was Knuckles, but there's one other character that has arguably a better backstory than Knuckles, and certainly has a better backstory than Sonic, and who actually undergoes a character arc that is so fascinating and so interesting that honestly, I say that this character is actually the best character from the Sonic the Hedgehog series, and thankfully, it's been long enough to where the collective fan base is getting their heads out of their asses and starting to agree with me. And that character is Shadow the Hedgehog. Effectively speaking, Shadow is an actual character. A lot of people think he's just a walking meme-spouting edgelord that's meant to just be the dark version of Sonic. No, he's not. He's something entirely different from Sonic. He actually has a very fascinating and very varied backstory, and the idea that not only was this movie hinting at setting up Shadow in the third movie, but we actually saw him. I can't wait. I don't want to wait. This movie took 2 years to make. I really hope they get to work on the third one as soon as possible, because I really can't wait to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and see Shadow the Hedgehog. I really wonder how it's going to go, because this movie was kind of like a combination of, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic and Knuckles all mixed into one, so what are we going to get for Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Is it going to be a mix of Sonic Adventure 2, and Shadow the Hedgehog? Are we going to see Black Doom? Are we going to find out about, Shadow's origin story? Of course we're going to, see a whole lot. We're going to have to see Maria. We're going to have to see Space Colony Arc. We're going to have Gerald Robotnik, and that's why I want Jim Carrey to return. Not just as Dr. Ivo Robotnik, he also has to play Gerald Robotnik, because between the two characters, his body type is actually more perfect for Gerald than it is for Ivo. So, I hope we see Rouge the Bat as well. I hope we see all the characters. I want to see more Sonic characters in the next movie. But I can't believe it. Shadow. We're getting Shadow for the next game. You guys you've seen my Sonic Heroes videos. You know, you've heard me gush about how much I love Shadow as a character because he actually has a very fascinating story if you just give him a chance. So, I am just blown away that we are finally getting Shadow in live action, and we're getting him so soon. I honestly didn't think that we'd get him so soon, because I honestly thought that with the third Sonic movie, it would be about Robotnik coming back and building Metal Sonic, and we wouldn't get Shadow the Hedgehog for at least a few more movies. Like, introduce some more characters, have Metal Sonic be the antagonist of the next movie, do a little bit more. So, the idea that we're getting Shadow so soon, it's both exciting and also kind of making me nervous, because it's like, well, what if they end with Part 3? That's the problem with really good movie franchises. You don't want them to end, but you know that at some point they should end. They should go out on a high note before they end up suffering from sequelitis. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd be perfectly okay with having more Sonic the Hedgehog movies after Sonic the Hedgehog 3. At most, I'd think that maybe you could get 6 Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Because I really hope that we do see Metal Sonic at some point. Metal Sonic, Mecha Sonic, any one of them. Give me a robotic version of Sonic that thinks it's the real Sonic. Let it capture the Master Emerald. Let it turn super. Let him and Sonic fight each other. And I just really hope that they do Shadow justice. I mean, I wonder if we'll see Omega, or if we'll see Gamma. There's so much to speculate about. There's so much to be excited about. And so, this is how you do it. I mean, this movie had its flaws, but like I said, I'm not spending my time thinking about how I would rewrite it, because I'm satisfied with the movie that we got. The first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I was thinking about all the ways that it could be better. This movie, all I'm thinking about is, how long do we have to wait for Part 3? I want to see Shadow. And because this movie had such a good writing, good pacing, good inside jokes, good fan service for all the references to the source materials, basically a love letter to the fans, and had the potential to get us excited for what comes next just as much as the first movie did, that is why I definitively 100% agree that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is fully deserving of being the #1 best video game movie of all time. And I have talked myself hoarse over the last 2.5 hours of this video. So, if you managed to stick it out this long, I appreciate you. I don't deserve you in any way. I hope that you enjoyed listening to my rambles. Please leave a comment down in the comment section below, like it and share it with your friends. You want to keep up to date with more content coming from the Linkzilla, including what should be reaction videos to the Jurassic World Dominion trailers, and more discussion videos involving Jurassic World, Godzilla, Doom, and all kinds of other things my channel is known for, then be sure to smash that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next video. Later!